Alex Jones, and I'm here to tell you folks, the world has fallen. The fascist globalist overlords, they're implementing the Great Reset. You don't believe me? I've seen the tapes. Watch it, folks. Watch as these pot-bellied Zoomer goblins work with the Illuminati to pit us against each other. I promise I'd be a good boy.
Ugh, I'm a good boy.
There's only one cure, folks, and that's liberty. And there's no better channel to find freedom than Fabian Liberty. Anarchy is order. Government is civil war.
You're offensive. Police lives matter?
We're just trying to do school.
What?
You guys have the same sticker as the others.
But this is our space. You're making the space uncomfortable. But you're white.
You're fucking a white male!
What is one way you combat racism? I don't root for white people on the sidewalk.
Man, don't stop you! Stop you!
They want your wallets, they want your guns, they want the wieners off your sons. Democrats.
Oh no! Oh, we should film
So let's say, for the sake of argument, that all of the water levels around the world rise by let's say 5 feet. You think that people aren't going to just sell their homes and move?
Just one small problem. Sell their houses to who, Ben? Fucking Aquaman! Vaccine!
COVID throughout the population at higher numbers. And people are not entitled to turn themselves into deadly biological weapons by spraying disease-laden aerosols wherever they choose, randomly killing innocent people. This is not freedom, this is homicide, and willful ignorance is no excuse.
What the fuck?
Highest margin of victory yet. It's really impressive. Though, I'm starting to think he might have had help from the Russians. Take a breath!
Look at me, I'm a gay dog. I'm so cool, I'm so neat. I'll never have children and I'm sterilized. But the media says I'm totally cool. I'm a gay dog, I'm a gay fish. It's so good, and I think my daddy atrazine.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Just realized I could resize the windows because there is no Twitch chat. Oh man, it's fucking weird switching over to YouTube. Like the fact that YouTube chat will integrate with OBS, but I can't type into OBS, and then I have
you can probably
to
take
have
the
another
sub goal
window.
down too.
I can take the what?
You can probably hide the
Oh
sub
yeah,
goal
let me
too.
get rid of the sub goal. Get rid of that as well. I mean, I could get rid of like the Twitch stuff at the top right, but I don't know that that's super helpful. Wait, who the fuck typed in Twitch chat? Wait, is chat integrated with YouTube as well? Fuck yeah, dude. I don't know how any of this shit works. I am not a YouTuber, boys. We are just here because Destiny is banned on Twitch. And it's the only reason we are here. And maybe, I don't know, maybe a debate with Destiny or somebody, or NotSoErudite or something, will bring some people over to YouTube, which would be nice. Be nice. It would be nice. We're going to take tomorrow. Oh, go ahead.
Said it wouldn't be upsetting.
Yeah. Oh, the haircut? I did. Yeah, I cut my hair when I'm poor, man. Whenever it's getting crazy, I'm just like, yeah, fuck it, cut it myself.
I do something similar.
Who here hasn't hit the like button? There's one of you. Yeah, like the stream or dislike the stream if you hate me. I don't give a fuck.
Just engage with the stream.
Yeah, Twitch doesn't care. If you get a bunch of dislikes, fucking YouTube will fucking pimp your shit out too. Not that there's any fucking discoverability on YouTube, which is why we're not YouTubers. But yeah, no, I just kind of cut my hair when it gets rowdy. Tomorrow we're gonna take off the day and we're gonna do a lot to try and improve the stream. We got green screens coming. That was a whole fiasco. We'll talk about that, but they should be here Tuesday. And also we're gonna put in some YouTube shorts from some of our better Twitch clips, and kind of brainstorm what we can do to make the stream better. Should be fun.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we're gonna make it happen.
Yeah, I was not like, I went to like get ready for the stream and everything, and I was like, oh, this fucking stream's at 7. Who the fuck does debate panels at 7? I was like, well, I thought we were to have like time to like come in and do a little bit of news or something, get some people in here. Like, no, this shit starts at 7. So I feel like a lot of people are gonna have to go back and watch the live stream later.
I mean, that's the punishment for not being here when we go live, man.
Right? You never know. You never know, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, you do know. You can usually count on us to be live on Twitch at 7.
And you definitely know, if you're here frequently, that if we're not live, you should check the Discord, because we've probably said why.
No, panel's at 7. Panel's about to start here in just a couple minutes.
Seven hours. So what, like Germany?
Right? Yeah, Germany would be
Reckon
7. Germany would be 7. How the fuck did you know, like, right off the bat? I had to think about it.
Well, I know the UK is 5, and then Europe's like half of America.
So you just kind of guessed with 2 more hours of time zones? That's pretty smart. Yeah. That's pretty smart. Germany is 7 hours ahead for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, you'd be surprised at how close you can get if you just kind of like mostly know the data. You're like, I'm close.
Turkey. He's in Turkey. He's a little further away.
Turkey. You having the burgers?
Just be careful with whatever you type.
Yeah, I mean, do you like living in Turkey? What's that like? I've never looked into it. No, actually, I did. I looked into it for roughly 20 hours as I played Assassin's Creed Revelations, I think. I don't know, the one where they're in Istanbul.
Yeah, Turkey fucking sucks, but the women are hot. And that was basically what I got from it. I was like, oh, there's a lot of strife here, and a lot of corruption, and like bad. Who the fuck?
That's why I say that's why I just say I love Asian women, not just Southeast Asian women or Oriental. It's like across the continent of Asia, they're just gorgeous women. Stay close enough considering how there's a piece of Turkey. Wait, what? There's a piece of Turkey in Germany. Sorry, my geography's not perfect, but I don't understand that. I thought Turkey was further away, but I don't know. There's a lot of beautiful Arabs. There's one who's in our chat a lot. Just objectively speaking. Revelation. I mean, Revelations had some cool stuff in it. It was kind of cool. They let you make the tripwire bombs and like the what they call it, like the thunder cracker or something, so you can bust open random wells, or one shot and eventually 2-shot some of those big boys. Okay, I mean, I thought that was probably what you meant, or like an embassy or something, but I figured I'd let you. I thought it was more fun to just be stupid. Why are you in Turkey, though?
Yo, chat. I ordered coffee because I needed to pick me up, and this person is a lost. Oh, fuck. But I gotta get out of here in just a minute. Oh, no. Did you really just burp into the fucking... When did you get beer?
When I went to the Mexican place.
You fucking piece of shit. You fucking piece of shit. No, you fucking piece of shit.
Their beer's like $1 cheaper, I found out today.
You fucking piece of shit. I don't even remember. I don't even know when you got beer, and you just over there burping, drinking beer. God damn it. Oh.
Don't worry, this is the last one.
It's whatever, man. I'm about to hop into a debate panel. Can you grab my coffee when it gets here? Because this lady's like geeking out.
Yeah, I'll open the door, I guess.
All right, appreciate it. All right, boys. So we're gonna hop in NotSoErudite's fucking Discord and go see what's up. Did you want to give us an Inspiro, Bob, before the debate, so I can feel inspired to debate Destiny and Primecayes and your environment, Seattle?
Oh, this will be fun. You get to debate Primecayes without him getting to mute you.
Yeah. Well, Professor Meat gets to mute me. I'm basically... Everyone here is a leftist.
A window can force you to stay young.
I mean, I guess inside of a mirror, yeah. All right. Let's get out of here, boys.
Good luck.
All right, chat. I'm here.
And then we were 5.
Awesome. All right, just so you guys know, I'm live.
I feel like we're probably all alive.
I should be. I really should be, but
wait, you're not alive on Twitch, right?
No.
I know about the ban.
The fucking the struggle is real. Damn it, Destiny. It's like you have so much pull, and at the same time you force people off. The dumbest thing Twitch has ever done.
It's the best thing Twitch has ever done. We're destroying the
we
political.
will make.
You're only saying that because Keffel's got your ass, and now you're stuck on fucking
First
YouTube.
of all, the only thing Keffel's
we will
got,
make YouTube politics a thing.
Yeah, we are making it a thing. It's being built one thing at a time. We're gonna escape the evil woke mob.
Hey, you know what? I would love for YouTube. Well, first of all, YouTube's just slightly less woke than Twitter and Twitch. Let's be honest. But
YouTube is so much better.
Dude, haven't you got a community strike? I've gotten a community strike. Come on, man.
Actually, I don't know how. I've never gotten in trouble on YouTube or Twitch. And I'm spicier
honestly,
than all
I
of
also
you.
don't know how.
The best thing about YouTube is it doesn't really have to do with politics at all. It's just that on YouTube, all of the enforcement is automated. Whereas on Twitch, they legitimately have that team is a bunch of like unironic San Francisco early mid-20s yuppies that are like hardcore fucking woke modern. I'm not even joking. Like that is the trust and safety team on Twitch.
But,
and they will manually go through to make
Yes.
sure that like the political element is there. But on YouTube, as long as you know what you can, like you don't say the shooting stuff or whatever, you stay away from certain words, certain topics, you're generally okay. You don't have to worry about somebody like politically assassinating you on YouTube.
Right, yeah, self-censorship, for the neoliberals, and you'll be okay. But what I also want to say though, right, is like there's got to be like at least one suit wearing guy, right, over top of all of these yuppies, and then they're like, all right, yes, we finally got Alinity. She's gone. And then there's one dude's like, no. This girl makes a lot of money. Like 2-day ban. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's got to be like one or two of those dudes, suits walking around him.
If you're a really big partner, big partner, your account manager could pull for you.
There it is.
From some moderate stuff. Even if they say they don't, you know they do. Or if you have a really big, but if you fuck up, like oftentimes you are, those teams are very, very, very separate. And you need to be in with an old school AM that has old school connects to other parts of that org in order to be saved. Because Keffel's getting banned is a really good example of like, holy shit, that's somebody that I would have never expected to get a 30-day ban on Twitch. Right. That's wild. But it's because she doesn't have an AM with those deep connections, even though she is technically part of their.
What happened to you?
Yeah, dude, it was actually so funny. Like, people posted an email or posted a stream of mine from like 12 years ago. And like, I think I opened my email at one point and I was like chatting casually with like Kevin Lin and fucking Emmett Shear, because back then those were the only people that I knew because it was a really small company. But these days, I don't know anybody at Twitch. Fuck no, I don't know. Like, everybody that I knew just in their head, like all of those people are gone, and it's just like a faceless San Francisco mob of fucking losers now.
So
I mean, that's
Steven,
Silicon Valley in general.
Would you go back then? Like, I mean, if you had the opportunity, if they unbanned you, would you go back and deal with that shit?
The thing is, it's hard to say no to that Twitch Prime money, but it's nice to be unbanned just so I could talk to people and not have to have them shut their streams off. So I'm not
honestly, Destiny, you should fight to get unbanned and then just not go back so that you can like be talking to all of those people and still be like, yeah, but YouTube's better. Twitch can go fuck themselves.
Giga Chad move.
Do that.
Giga Chad. Annoying dynamic. But I think that they apparently you can appeal every 6 months, so I've got to wait like 5 more months for my next appeal, and we'll see.
So stupid.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all for being here for our YouTube only. I didn't actually get too many banned boys, but that's the goal of this, is to kind of migrate a little bit more into YouTube politics in general. I do hear a bit of a echo of myself. I think it's from Destiny again.
Yeah, it is.
What a surprise.
Got hearing loss? What is it?
Just got banned off of Twitch, and he's already fucking turning into Boomer with all of his settings.
Forgets how this all works.
All right, check. Sounds good. Okay. All right. So how this is going to work, this panel show is called Both Sides. We're going to typically max out between 4 to 5 debaters at a time. My goal is to be about 4. So you're seeing 5 people here. However, myself and Professor Meat in the center are actually both moderators. My job as the moderator is I'm going to be watching concision. I have a timer that's been built. I'm just going to be timing you guys as you speak and cueing you guys to wrap things up if you're taking too long. I give everyone a minute and a half at one time to speak. At that point, I will basically say, hey, wrap it up 2 sentences. If you don't wrap it up, I will mute you eventually because we have to move on. The goal is most conversations suck when people just monologue forever. The second thing is going to be active and intentional bad faith. So the way that we're going to operationally define it, because I'm not going to have fights with people on my panel about what bad faith is mainly going to be focused around if I'm interlocuting with somebody and they seem to be critically and unquestionably never actually hearing my argument and arguing around it and arguing for positions that I haven't said, we're going to just quickly address that. We're going to say, hey, this is actually their position.
Why does
Please
she
deal
love
with
that
it.
word?
And then we're going to let you guys
interlocutor?
go because I think 2 things that stall is lack of concision and aggressive bad faith. So
like
Meek
such
is going to be doing
not
the
a
bad faith
colloquialism.
queuing. So he'll pop in. Hopefully it'll be pretty hands off. I tried to select people that I think it's not going to be too much of an issue for a premiere, but that's kind of the goal, is to mostly just let people talk and have it not be an obnoxious looping shithole. Okay, any questions about the rules from the moderators? Because this is the first time we're doing this officially on Friday night.
Seems like a lot, but I'm pretty sure we'll figure it out. So
A minute and a half. It goes quick. Most people burn it up pretty quickly. You guys will also have a 1 minute for opening-ish. If you go a little bit longer, I'm not going to punish you or anything like that. That's basically it. We're going to be pretty hands-off with the rules other than that. So maybe we'll start at the bottom. Just introduce yourself. You don't need to give your opening statement. Just tell us who you are, your socials, and thank you so much for being here. We'll start with you, KP or Soy Adel. I don't know what you prefer.
Whoa, how about you give us this wonderful, wonderful topic for tonight, please?
These
you
are
don't want to
these are
introduce
intros.
yourself? Yeah.
Okay, just intros, then topic and opening.
Just drop your
argument.
name, and then you can.
Okay. Great. Okay, I am Carl, aka Soy Adel. I am the soy boy from Seattle. I am a centrist anarchist, neoliberal, communist, libertarian anarchist, whatever you want. I'm confused. I'm entirely unsure what I'm doing here, but I have had some experience in electoralism and inter-party politics. So you can find my socials at linktree/YesTV. Hope you know how to spell Linktree, or soyadel.tv. That's Seattle, take out the C, add in the soy.
Awesome. Thank you. Primecayes?
Still trying to figure out what his socials are. Okay. Yeah, thanks all. Hi, my name is Primecayes, spelled Primecayes. Yes, I'm on YouTube, I'm on Twitch. We do panels like this, but far less structured. This is a person who likes to have rules. We are a bit more wild over my place, so we love to have you. And we do open panels where you may be involved. So if you want to come on and argue about people like this, right, then that's your opportunity. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Okay, Fabian.
All right, so I am, I guess, tonight's resident non-leftist, which should be fun. All different varieties of lefties, and then there's me on a show called Both Sides, which is kind of interesting, because I think Soyado and I kind of prove that there's more than 2 sides. But that being said, I'm an anarcho-capitalist, so imagine that I'm just like Soyado, but a little bit less confused and a lot more right-wing economically. But I love you, especially when we talk about nuclear energy. That being said, yeah, I'm an anarcho-capitalist. I'm Fabian Liberty, Scott from Fabian Liberty. We're an anarcho-capitalist duo stream, usually on Twitch. Tonight we're on YouTube. But you can search on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube for Fabian Liberty. Just look for that beautiful black and yellow flag with a sheep symbol over top of it, and you'll find us.
All right, and Destiny.
I'm Destiny. I am the omniliberal. We have all the best parts of every political ideology combined into one. And then I scream at people on the internet, and you can find me on Twitter at the omniliberal. It's the best Twitter.
Alrighty. Okay, so we're going to start with the introduction of the topic and then 1 minute opening statements. So the question is, as you guys saw already, belief in our institutions on both sides of party lines is at an all-time low. Is voting enough to correct the problems that we see within our institutions? If not, voting, is there sufficient due process within our institutions to correct the problem in another venue? Are democratic institutions broken beyond repair? This will be the full topic. There is not a secondary topic. We'll basically continue the conversation until it dries up. I don't have a mandatory 2 hours or a minimum 2 hours. We'll just talk until people want to kind of finish or we finish looping. So maybe we'll do the reverse order for opening statements for 1 minute. Go ahead, Destiny.
Voting is the best way to have your grievances addressed in our system. The problem is not enough people do it. The demographic of people that do vote are super messed up and super skewed. I think our system works. I think it works exceptionally well. And I think sometimes that's the issue that we have with it. We want to blame the system. We want to blame corporations. We want to blame all these other things. But the reality is when you look at all of the policies that exist in the United States, from the federal level to the state level to the local level, everything exists in the way that it does. And it makes a ton of sense if you just consider who's voting. Case in point, criminal justice. Everybody cries about it. Look at who votes in local elections. It's usually older people, usually whiter people, usually wealthier people. That's why nothing ever happens with criminal justice, because these people aren't getting arrested. They never have any engagement with the system, et cetera, et cetera. You can do this with every political issue at every stage, at every size of the American electoral system. Vote. It is the most important thing.
Awesome. Fabian.
Yeah, so I would say that voting in and of itself has no power. The question is really problematic because it makes a bunch of philosophical assumptions that aren't true. So first of all, obviously we don't live in a democracy. Anyone that says that is, just trying to simplify terms. We live in an oligopoly, masquerading as a republic, masquerading as a democracy. And so voting in and of itself has no actual power. What has power is that voting is a tool that we use to that politicians use to try and gauge the system that they work in and try and play around those rules. What has power is the will of the people and their means to kind of fight back against the state, right? And voting in many ways is somewhat representative of that. I think Emma Goldman said it best when she said if voting changed anything, they wouldn't let you do it. And I think that's kind of true. That being said, voting is a good system towards trying to reduce some violence. And I think that we can use voting if we use voting and combined with a lot of other things as a means of taking away power from the state. In terms of, is our democracy broken? Well, if you're talking about America, that's probably it was broken from the moment it was instituted because democracy is bad. But also, it's probably been broken from what the founding fathers envisioned, and we've had, kind of a proto-fascist state since the end of the Civil War and during the Civil War, and it's kind of been broken since then. And I'm not sure if we can fix it with voting alone. I don't think it would be preferable to do so.
Awesome. Prime?
Yes. So I think that when it comes to our institutions, I thought this question was problematic as well, right? One, I think that if it's just down to voting, well, yeah, we have an option, a mechanism within our society to make changes. I agree with Destiny there that you have to engage with the system, right? Like use the tools that you have available. And of those tools, I think we do have some robust tools that can make changes if change is what you want, right? So I think the ability is there. However, I think that everything around that ability, right? The public's access to the vote, right? The public's access to our institutions, all those things are damaged, right? Even the public's understanding of what the institutions even do, right? And I think some of that is even purposeful, that people don't even know how the best way to engage, right? So you could say simply vote, sure, okay, but then I do vote, and then nothing seems to change, and I don't see like results in my life, and things maybe seem to get worse. And I think it's an extremely discouraging process. I think it's vote, it's organize, but it's also like have an understanding of what these institutions are and how to either bend them to your will or have a plan to have some sort of institutional reform. So I'll leave it there.
Awesome. Okay, and Soy.
All right. I think of the three, I agree with you all and I disagree with you all. Of course, voting is necessary but not sufficient. You must vote if you expect anything to change, but you also must do more than voting. You need to contact your representatives. You need to organize. And what we mean by organizing is speaking to other people who are going to vote and finding out, what their positions are and organizing around their needs and building up communities and collective interests in improving your system. Make everything local. Really get out there and find these groups of synergy, groups that you're going to build a policy around. Get involved in party politics. I've been involved in both the Democratic and the DSA parties, as well as campaigning for many wonderful campaigns that are on my back wall. And it's never going to be enough to get our perfect world. But if you don't try, well, you've surrendered all of your agency. And if you do nothing but vote, I feel that you've pretty much surrendered your agency in that case to people who are engaged in the system and are speaking up on your behalf.
Okay, so with that, we're gonna open the panel if anyone would like to respond.
Fabian, what do you think you can vote your way out of Jim Crow? Like voting was actually not allowed, depending if you were black or poor at one point in America.
Do I think you can vote your way out of Jim Crow? Probably not. Why? What's the? Can you examine why you're asking that question?
Your quote was, sort of a snappy thing. If voting actually did anything, it would be illegal. And of course, it was illegal at some point in our history.
I mean, that's a witty retort, I guess, against Emma Goldman, but that's not the point or the context of the quote. So.
I think it's exactly the point in that we have to stretch outside simply voting and join others in direct action when it's appropriate. But I don't.
But we
think
agree
that
on that.
direct action.
That's the point. The point and
good.
context of what I'm saying is that, yes, you can use voting, right? But voting by itself doesn't have any power. Yeah. They're definitionally can't have any power, right?
Yeah. With our organizing, we can make voting matter, and that's more to the point.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be backed up by the will of the people and to challenge the violence of the state, right? Ultimately, if the state is of the opinion that voting keeps you from fighting them, right, then they will give you whatever wedge issues you want whilst continuously gaining more power, as they've done since the founding of our nation. And they'll kind of just let you have your paltry little victories, your little culture war victories. And meanwhile, they'll consolidate wealth at the top. They'll change the rules. They'll make it harder for you to do what it is that you want to do. They will take away liberty, right? And so voting in and of itself, that process, you're appealing to the authority that has the monopoly on violence and has the monopoly on the usage of that violence and is the judiciary of that violence, all together. So ultimately voting definitionally, it can't be enough. It has to be activism. It has to be a change in culture and philosophy, and it has to be a change in the willingness to act in certain spaces or engage in agorism and things like that to exert your pressure on the system.
I think so. I don't think anybody disagrees. It's never just voting. But the question is if somebody says if you go to the gym, will that help you get more muscle? I don't think anybody would say no, it can't just be the gym. It also has to be sleeping, and it also has to be eating. Well, yeah, of course. So if you want to be politically engaged, there are more steps to be politically engaged than just voting. But voting is arguably the most important part of that political process, because if the right people don't vote the right way, then nothing else matters. It is the part where we plug in quite literally to our institutions, aside from working for them. I mean, Jim Crow as an example was brought up, right? Jim Crow was ended by voting. Yeah, this.
I don't know that you can say Jim Crow was ended by voting. Jim Crow was also created by voting.
True. I'm sorry. Hold on. I phrased that as a question. Let me restate that. Jim Crow was ended by voting. It was challenged multiple times by the Supreme Court, right, in cases like Brown v. Board of Education. And the Civil Rights Act of '64 literally came from our Congress that we voted on. And this is how Jim Crow got eliminated in a lot of different states, right, in '64 and '65 following with the Voting Rights Act. So, yes, Jim Crow was gotten rid of via voting.
You're doing a lot of work to say that the state went against other institutions of the state that were violating people's rights and then saying voting did this. It's Maybe like
Well,
you know,
every
like it's
single-
7
every
degrees
single-
of Kevin
okay, so-
Bacon there.
Hold on, I don't want to make it a total libertarian debate, but you always do this thing where libertarians will pose the state against the people, but you ignore the fact that there are times when the state acts on the will of the people, right?
But
like the state
no,
doesn't just do things
your
arbitrarily,
example-
the state is doing things.
Well, give me the example, because Jim Crow's a terrible example, because it's the state acting against the state that had already fucked over the people. So if you want an
But
example,
the state didn't arbitrarily choose to fuck over the people with Jim Crow. That was the will of the people at one point in time, was to be able to discriminate against certain groups of people.
it wasn't the will of certain people,
No,
right?
it was the will of enough of them to make it law, hence the voting part, right?
Which is why voting is in and of itself problematic, because it is conflict. There is no way to
every type of engagement with the political system is going to be conflict. That's such a worthless statement. All
no, it's
engagement
not a
with
worthless
politics-
statement. It's not a worthless
Can you
statement.
give me one type of political
A better
activity that doesn't
statement.
involve some type of conflict? All of them. All of it does.
Almost all of the activities that are engaged in Cospaya, almost all of the
let's
activities are
find-
engaged in Toronto, Mexico, right?
Hold on. Let's find a better statement like the tyranny of the majority. You're a libertarian, you should be familiar with that one. So let's deploy it here and say, yes, sometimes voting is, 51% of people putting a tyrannical judgment on the minority, the 49%. So it's split 50-50. I want us to get to super democracy, where we have things like individual veto and local collective agreements that actually build up a just system based on sound principles, rather than, we like the rainbow flag today, we didn't like it yesterday.
But there's no way to ever make a system that's going to make every person happy, right?
Well,
if you're having a
no.
society, you're necessarily going to have some people plugged into that society that aren't going to be happy with 100% of the decisions made.
Right, but it's not about whether
conflict is absolutely fine, right? That conflict between parties is absolutely okay, right? But I
it's
wanted
not conflict.
to
Unhappiness is not conflict. What's conflict is imposing your will on other people, aggression. You can have a voluntary society.
No, sometimes it's perfectly fine.
You can never have a totally
enforce
voluntary
your will.
society, right? You have to
fuck that. No, we should actually impose our will on people. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, at some point we shouldn't impose our will. Like, you're doing a bad thing, stop doing that bad thing, right? And let's use a powerful organization to make sure you don't do that, so that the rest of society can work in a smooth manner. Absolutely, we should impose our will. At some point, we will have to do that within any organization, right? If we lived in Ancapistan, right, we'd have to impose your will on me, because I'd try to create an actual fucking functioning government. And then you'd say, hey, we don't want to do that anymore. Okay, so that's inevitable.
That's
what
not
I
true.
wanted to ask though was is a basic, more of a basic question, because like there's a lot embedded in the question that our friend Erudite has asked. So like, what are the institutions to begin with, and what are people actually losing faith in? Right, we have a very wide. Diverse country, and people have all kinds of thoughts about this. Like when we say this word institutions, what do you mean, right? Like, is it just parts of the government? Is it like the rules and the order that we impose on ourselves? Like, what is it? What are we talking about, and what have we actually lost faith in?
I think an institution is going to be some establishment that we've entrusted with, like, almost monopolistically, with like the safety and security of our society to some extent. So like when we look at the institution of our criminal justice system, we've entrusted them with the ability to monopolize on violence, to pass judgment on us. When we look at the institution of voting, this is an institution that's supposed to like safeguard the ability for us to vote and elect leaders. We look at the institution of Congress, I think that's roughly what it is. They're these external, like, huge things that are part of like safeguarding and running our society that we were entrusting with a lot of power to do.
I mean,
okay.
I wouldn't work with that colloquial definition. I mean, it's like not the definition, but like that's
okay.
That's
What is the definition that you want to use?
Well, no, I'm saying I would work with that colloquial definition.
Well, no. Hold on. Give me the academic definition that we should be using.
I mean, well, an academic definition would be like any organization that has a purpose that is founded upon like educational or religious or, right, you know what I mean? But it would become meaningless to the conversation of like trust in the institution. So I'm saying, like, while that's not technically the definition, yeah, that's a good working definition that I accept.
Okay.
Sure.
It's not that weird to say, yeah, I'll accept that when you propose a definition that isn't the word.
So typically, it's usually an underhanded comment to go, your definition is fucking retarded, but I guess we can use it for the purpose of
I never said it was fucking retarded.
I know you did, but that was the implication. But that's okay.
That's not the implication at all.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. Well, I'm implying that it was the implication, so go.
Only love here. Okay.
The original debate bro is so ready.
You guys are being okay.
Well, they're just like, what's the point of the comment? Like, why say like somebody asked, what's your definition? And I give the definition like, That's an adequate definition, even if it's not the academic one. Why
Okay,
even say it? Why even
Not
get
everyone
Okay,
into it?
Stephen, your feelings are hurt.
Not
Stephen, your
everyone is
feelings
as
are
mean
hurt,
as
okay.
you.
My feelings are hurt.
You've spoken to Vosh too many damn times, all right? Like,
Yeah,
I'm not
right.
playing tricks here. I'm just saying I will accept that colloquial definition for the usage of the conversation.
Okay,
Can we
that's
move
cool.
to-
That's cool.
We move to the next step. All right, kumbaya here. Like, how have they actually failed us? And do you guys agree, right? Like, do you guys agree that they've actually failed? Because I
obviously.
think that so many of our institutions actually haven't changed, right? Like, maybe on the margins, things haven't changed. So how is it that they're failing us? And is this idea of them failing, is this a new thing, right? Because it seems to me, looking at a wider sweep of history than like just the present, that if you go into the past, people have always said these things, right? There are some points in times where people have a bit more trust in them, but like the institution is always failing someone at some point in time, right? And they'll have a lot of the same complaints that I think some people have today. So like, in what ways do you actually think this institutions are actually falling apart?
Okay, well, so I would posit one first, that the institutions that have monopolistic power over individuals that is coercive is designed to be bad. It's not designed to reduce conflict. It's designed to oppress. That being said, right? Like, why don't we pick a specific institution if we want to have this conversation? Like, we could pick the media, we could pick voting, like we could pick whatever you guys want to go with. Like, pick an institution and we can look at it historically, because I think most of our institutions have gained in conflict in the last, let's say, 15, 20 years because of different social movements and political pressure.
I think you're absolutely right. So why not try the Supreme Court? I mean, it's something that's in the news, right? And people have all kinds of opinions about that now. So people say that the Supreme Court is failing, this institution is failing, right? Right now, the left is saying that a lot, right? Like, well, this is a failed institution. And that's kind of because we lost, right? We got our asses kicked, and it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
But previously, our conservative brothers and sisters were saying the exact same thing, right? That this is an institution that's completely failed us. It needs a massive reform, and then they went out and did that reform.
Yeah, well, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I thought, my bad.
Sure. So just the last thing then. So I think that the Supreme Court as an institution is doing what it's supposed to do, and that I think it's a stifle on democracy, right? It holds us back from putting in whatever we like, right? Like it keeps us within the bounds of the Constitution or someone's interpretation of that Constitution. So I think it's working just as it's always been planned. I think that our understanding of how to use the Supreme Court, at least here on the left, right, has not advanced the way it has on the right. The Supreme Court is an institution of power, right? So we should use that, right? We should pack the court with as many people as we can, right? And we should use it like with complete abandon.
2 sentences.
Right? Like, sure, sorry. So we should use it with complete abandon and not be worried about like the rules because the other side isn't.
Okay, yeah, no, I think you illustrate the problem so succinctly with the evil that you want to commit, right? Which is that you want to create, you want to make the state more abusive, right? And you want to move in a direction to use it as it already is, which is an institution of power that determines what rights people have and don't have without any actual basis upon voluntary power, right? The Supreme Court, ever since the Warren Court, right? So, I mean, like, we could go back and say that the Supreme Court didn't really step into the role of like constitutionality except under extreme circumstances, right? But, you know, ever since then has always functioned as a means of growing the power of the state. That it was a failed institution from the beginning because democracy is a failed institution if it's not voluntary. But yes, the court has gotten worse. But what's funny is that you say, well, the left has failed to understand how to use that power effectively. That's just not true, right? Like, the DNC and the left have used the court to stop Trump over and over and over and over again. It has been, Trump was one of the most litigated presidents in history by different firms that were certainly left-wing in their political perspective, saying Trump is going too far. He's abusing his power. In our opinion, we're going to challenge this shit immediately. And like, the Supreme Court was used very actively during the Trump administration, as it was during other previous administrations.
So I don't know.
We need to have a conversation. We need to figure out if we want to argue like about democracy or not. Because like we're just having an ANCAP debate right now. Is that what we want to do,
Yeah.
or?
No, I don't.
Because
I
now
don't
we're
wanna-
arguing.
I mean,
that's what we're having. Because Fabian, this is an ANCAP debate now. Like, should the state
Yeah.
have any power? Because every single question is now through the lens of like, well, of course the Supreme Court is bad. All institutional power is bad. All democracy has failed and bad. All of it. Like, if that's what we want to talk about, we can. But let's shift gears into that then, and drop the.
I have no problem taking on all three of you on the framing of my philosophy.
Supreme Court.
I would rather not. But
Okay, well, because that is where we're at, and that's where you're at, and that's where we're
Well,
all
right.
at. We're in
You
the
brought
libertarian
on-
black hole right now.
You brought on
I
three
wanna
lefties
focus-
and then an ANCAP. What the fuck did you think would happen?
Let me
So-
propose a
Yes.
question to y'all to try and reframe this.
Can I
Can
respond? Because I like to respond to what he was saying.
Sure, absolutely.
So like I'm just gonna ignore the ANCAP problem, but like talking about the Supreme Court and how Trump was litigated, right? So I actually don't know. I don't know if that's the case, but I'm gonna believe you. I'm just gonna take you on your word on that he was the most litigated and probably maybe held back by the Supreme Court. However, the public doesn't feel that, right? The public doesn't actually keep track of these things.
Yeah,
I think
because
it's
the
another
public
part
is
of,
stupid.
Like trying, hold on, yeah. But I think it's another part of like what exactly does it mean to an institution be failing, right? So people on the left, right, or excuse me, just like the general public looks at the abortion issue, and many people want abortion, right? Want access to abortion care, and they see that they've lost access to that, and then that defines for them means this institution has failed. It is not being used in the way that I prefer, right? So they don't look at all those cases, which I
You're
believe
making my argument for
you're
me.
saying.
It's not
Sure, whatever.
it's not used the
But
way
I'm-
that I want the power to be used against
Yeah.
other people.
No.
I have
You can't
conflict
fixate
with
on
part
that.
of society, and instead of having a voluntary system where we set those things up, instead I want to pack the court, your words, not mine, and I want to use that power to force the people that I disagree with to
Absolutely.
agree with my position.
Evil.
Absolutely, that's what it is. That's what politics is. It's without.
Yeah, we should break that. We should stop it.
Sure. All right. Whatever. ANCAP. Sure.
No, we do
debate,
use
again.
guns. Just the state uses them. Or did you forget about
we've
Breonna
gotta
Taylor?
We've got to rise above this loop because, if we have different concepts about how the court should be used and what the purpose of the court is. The purpose of the court is to reinforce the precedents that we set in the past. And so, yeah, sure, that means that the state's going to use it in a way that consolidates power, but also people like we have with our right to reproductive care. We are going to reinforce that decision over and over and over again. And when that decision gets reversed, when that precedent gets violated for no good reason, that's when that institution has failed. It's not like, ooh, I get my turn, blue hat, red hat. It's not that bullshit. It's when an actual precedent has been completely reversed and totally like the reasons that precedent was set have been ignored. That's when it fails.
Soyato, does anyone? But yeah, I was just about to say, can you find any quote or any part of the Constitution or anything that supports the idea that stare decisis is the purpose of the Supreme Court? Because I just completely disagree with that as the intention of the Supreme Court. Might be what you want from the Supreme Court.
We're talking about the right to abortion and the argument that that my family's freedom to reproduce is a decision that is held between us and our medical provider. And the difference between, whether my wife had an abortion or a miscarriage back in 2014, 2015, that is not for the state to impinge upon.
When the Supreme Court,
so you didn't answer the question.
ruled
We're
against separation, equal separation. Sorry, that's not the word I'm looking for. But separation of the races. But when it ruled against separate but equal. Excuse me. Separate but equal. When it ruled against that, right? That was ruling against precedents. But people thought, well, it's the same part of the population thought that it was unfair, right? No one actually gives a shit about precedents. They want the Supreme Court to do what they to exercise their will, right? To exercise their values, right? When it's not doing that, then the institution has failed.
No, only the left wants
That's
that.
just how people look at it. No one gives a shit. No,
Only the left
the
openly wants
conservatives do the exact same thing. Absolutely do the exact same thing, right? That's what they're doing right now. What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, I would say that the pre-modernists and the religious conservatives want their Supreme Court justices to represent their values, right? But when you look at Scalia, for example, right, and Thomas as well, the examples that they give, they specifically want an interpretation, an originalist interpretation of the Constitution. So not everybody wants the Supreme Court to represent their current today values. Plenty of people want the Supreme Court to represent the original framing of the Constitution and the original framing of any amendments to the Constitution, and believe that is
the set of values, right? A set of values that you may agree with, and it's your interpretation of that original set, and what part of those rules that are set through in the Constitution that you actually want to pay attention to, right?
But
do you want to pay attention to the three-fifths compromise, right? Then you're going to pay attention to that, right? Or do you want to pay attention to all men are created equal? Then you're going to like that's
not true.
What we do.
It's not about your individual values that you want the Supreme Court to uphold for constitutional originalists. It's about the fear of the abuses of the government, right?
And okay, hold on. Just to be clear, there are plenty of different valid ways through which how the Constitution should be interpreted. To pretend that there's like one right way is not true. There's different ways that you can do readings of the Constitution. Right now, we have a court that tends to be a bit more originalist, right? And other people feel like you can have more of a living Constitution, whatever the fuck, a more exaggerated version or whatever. Things like substantive due process and these other more unimplied or unenumerated rights that might exist in it. But there's not like a right answer there, right? That's a matter of we have disagreements. You vote on the president that'll nominate.
I mean, I would have an opinion about legislating from the bench, but like, yes, you're correct. One could legislate from the bench. One could be an originalist. One could value stare decisis above all else, and one could say stare decisis doesn't fucking matter at all, right? Like, yes, there are different interpretations.
Yeah. And the only way to enforce
valid, but also equally oppressive. But
yeah. Okay, we're not talking about the oppressive, but yeah.
Next institution, please. Let's just cut it off and move on to the next one. Like school, I don't care.
Pick whichever one you want. You've been quiet.
Yeah,
pick one.
We can, but within this, the Supreme Court, I think is a really good one. We can move on to voting if you want. But
well, I mean, we could talk about our loss in faith with different institutions, and I think that police is a pretty good one, and one that I have a lot to say about. And so we could talk about, what is it about law enforcement that has succeeded in the past, and where has it gone recently? We've seen a big militarization of the police. We have seen a gradual erosion of their responsibility to the people who they police, and the response from governments and unfortunately from constituencies is, oh, I'm a little scared and I'm just going to keep voting to maintain the stability of where I live, because that's the thing that matters the most to me. And that's why 2020 and all the protesting that we did really didn't amount to much at all. We had that vote here in Seattle, and it failed by a 2/3 to 1/3 vote. We did not get our defund the police initiative passed, even in the supposedly socialist bastion that is Seattle.
So I think that the reason why is because police are largely and overwhelmingly a positive institution, and most Americans across all racial groups recognize that. I think there are also a couple of hard truths that people have difficulty coming to terms with. One is that local voting is incredibly important for police institutions, and it is the least engaged that we are when it comes to voting. Two is that having more police in areas does reduce crime. As much as we don't like to admit it, it probably is the case that is true. And three, a lot of the biggest calls for police have been from people that live in the biggest crime areas. The idea that the only people that are asking for more police are wealthy people in suburbs is just not true. There isn't even that much crime in those areas. It doesn't make sense that they would be the ones calling for it the most. So I think that balancing out our understanding of the police as an institution and what that role ought to be is hampered by our ability, one, to understand what the problems are and how to effectively utilize the police, and then two, our inability to recognize some of the realities of the police, like what they're supposed to do, and even how we quote some things. Like you mentioned that erosion of responsibility. A lot of people mention oh, the police don't have a duty to protect. They're just going to sit there and watch you die. First of all, in a lot of states, you will get in trouble as an officer if you do that. That ruling just had to do with whether or not a police department could be held financially liable if you call somebody for breaking in and they don't show up in time or something like that. Is there going to be financial restitution that the state has to pay because they didn't show up?
Two cases.
Sure.
That affirm that they don't have a constitutional duty to protect.
It means that they're not going to be held financially liable for not intervening in a certain case or whatever.
No,
Yes.
it also means that they don't have a constitutional duty to protect.
They might not have a constitutional duty, but the ruling doesn't mean that cops are going to just sit there and watch you die every time, and that's what they're going to do.
Right, but you're also reframing the decision as if to say that it's just about whether or not you can sue if they don't show up in time, and that's not true. It affirms
My understanding was
that they
the
don't have a
impetus-
constitutional duty. So, for example, you can't sue them, for example, if they refuse to come to your neighborhood because they don't come to your high crime neighborhood late at night. This happened to me growing up in the ghetto plenty of fucking times, where I would say, hey, I heard gunshots, there was a drive-by, and they go, cool, we don't come to your neighborhood at night. We come in during the day because it's too dangerous for us, so we're not coming. You guys deal with it yourself. And the Supreme Court said that's perfectly acceptable, right? It's not like it's not like the response time. It's not like the response time is 5 minutes, and therefore I sue them because they couldn't stop something.
I'm gonna toss it to KP. He's just had the least talking time.
Oh no, I was making jokes. I think Fabian's doing a great job, but yeah, basically it's all over Uvalde. Is the duty to intervene and the corruption within the police force is all over that incident, and really that is part of when we talk about police as an institution failing. Yes, it can be majority, great, but it isn't backed up by the responsibility to actually do good. It's like the great man fallacy. It's like, oh, it's such a great man. Bill Gates is such a base dude. He's just doing great stuff all the time. It's okay when he feels like it, he does some good things. The cops, when they feel like it, do good things. They're not required to do it.
They're a monopoly.
But my problem.
That's it. It's really that simple.
Here's one of the problems with this, right? Like one, as people know about me, right, that I'm all for defunding the police, right? I love it. I want to do it. Makes me hard. But I think that one of the reasons that movement has largely failed is because that the focus isn't expansive enough, right? Like what we're looking for is reform of the system. It's not simply like taking money out of the police, right? It's reform of the system. If the police happen to have the exact same amount of funds within their institution, like that'd be fine. But like as long as they treated the public better, right? If people felt it was more fair.
Yeah, you could ban the war on drugs and they double their funding.
The police, but the police are just the front-facing side of the state, right? Of the justice system in general, right? We need to have larger reform of the justice system itself, right? Of the incentives that drive the police to do the things that they do, right? The incentives that get police forces to hire the people that they do. We have, and the laws that they're enforcing in and of themselves, right? Like that has to be part of the issue. But like what? It's not a surprise that when people see, right, in media, right, the police abusing individuals, right, like abusing people in an unfair manner, that they blame the police, they blame the people in blue, right, and for good reason, because that person does need to be blamed. However, like the real enemy is everything behind the force behind that cop.
So I want us to extend an olive branch, right? Because I can talk about all day long, because Destiny doesn't want the argument framed in one he can't win, which is anarchism and libertarianism. He has to do it from a statist perspective because he'll just lose. So I'll reframe it from a statist perspective and talk about policies we could do right now that would actually fix the system. And one of the things.
Let's frame the police from the libertarian perspective. Let's hear it. How does that work?
It's a monopoly on power and violence, and so yes, there is a duty there, and you are technically correct. But the problem is that the people have no meaningful ability to challenge that duty because they have a monopoly on the ability of deciding what is legal and illegal in the state, and they have the ability to enforce.
Where do the laws come from?
What do you? They come from a government that we supposedly.
Where does the government? Where do the elected officials in the government come from?
You want me to do an entire logic tree of both voting, both corporate
the logic
power,
tree is going to be that
elites,
the police actually have no ability to decide the laws that regulate them. The laws come from the elected officials.
They get to
system
first of all, they get to decide what laws to enforce, and the state.
No, they don't.
Yes, they do.
Ooh.
No, they don't.
And they absolutely do. They absolutely
no, they absolutely
do.
don't.
No, you're
unhappy
false.
with how you're just wrong. If you're
You're
unhappy
wrong.
with the way the police, there is a reason why getting the backing of the police is such an important part of like an election for any like local election. Is because the way that mayors and police work with each other,
don't
is they
run
have a
away
lot
from
of
this.
control over what happens.
Don't run
I'm
away
not running
from
away
this.
from anything.
Don't
I'm
run
telling
away.
you that if you're not happy with how your police department functions, there are going to be things that come from your mayor choosing your chief of police and the conversation that happened for
No.
how
Don't
police
run
have to
from
act.
this. Don't run
What
from
am I
this.
running from? I'm not running from anything.
You're running. You said that police don't have the ability to choose which laws they enforce.
Police, you can argue that that's great. You can argue that police have the ability to be discretionary when they enact certain enforcement procedures, sure, on an individual level. But when it comes to like the laws, don't say there you go. You're misunderstanding because you're framing something like a child. Okay? Saying that there is a
You
such
framed
thing,
it that way. I just called you out on it.
Let me finish, okay? Saying that there might be selective enforcement of laws, that a police officer doesn't pull over every single speeder is not the same as saying police write the laws. That's a childlike, reductive way of viewing that.
I never said that.
Selective enforcement or discretionary
don't
enforcement.
straw man me after you pivot and run.
Implying. Okay, I'm sorry. So your statement: do police decide which laws to enforce? Is that correct? Because police can exercise discretion.
Yes, technically speaking.
So police can just eradicate like entire groups of laws, and citizens have no recourse for that. There's nothing that citizens can do to amend that situation.
I never said that citizens
Washington
have no
State
recourse.
Initiative
So who
1639.
Who ultimately has the authority there then? Who ultimately has the ability to affect like what police are enforcing?
Who ultimately, like, that's a univariate analysis. There's multiple
Thank
ways.
you, true.
There's multiple ways that we can change.
So it's not just
what
the
is
police
enforced.
officer, right?
I never said just.
Policies that come. Okay.
You made
That's
a
cool.
de facto univariate analysis. I called you out on it. Then you tried to pivot away from it. Then you got mad and said that I was having a childlike interpretation.
I know that you're,
and then you
excited
straw
to
manned
use
me.
All the debate. Yes. Jesus. What were there? 3 debate terms? We had pivoting. We had straw man. Did we get ad hominem in there too? Are we doing all the philosophy debate terms today? Do you want to add absurdium me or anything? Right. The reality is that how police act is you can utter that phrase monopoly on violence all you want, and then say police are the ones that choose which laws to enforce. Which in the most entirely reductive, naive way of the system, sure, kind of. But at the end of the day, the laws come from the legislature, whether it's the federal legislature, the state legislature, or your fucking city, depending on what you're talking about.
Or department
right?
policy.
The laws come from that, and then what the police ultimately end up having to enforce, oftentimes, is going to be the laws that are passed by representatives that are elected by the people. So just uttering the statement, well, police choose which laws to enforce, is brainless.
Well, no.
Wow,
well, like we can look at a great example of this, right? Civil asset forfeiture is a very large part of almost every police department, especially in cities, right? And so civil asset there's no laws that are being passed about this. This is department policy. And it's a violation of multiple amendments of the Constitution. And it happens regularly because they have that discretion.
Has it been challenged in the Supreme Court?
Civil asset forfeiture? I think there was one case that like tangentially dealt with it, but not directly. Hasn't been.
So
pulled
who
by
are
the
you to
Supreme
say that
Court.
it's a violation of everything of multiple amendments of the Constitution if it seems to be?
Hold on. Are we just saying that we can't call anything unconstitutional unless the Supreme Court goes in?
Well,
you believe
it's strange to have a conversation about law and then to utter something like, well, this is unconstitutional, like it's a fact of the matter when we're talking about the fact relating to the legal decisions around these departments. So it seems that it is not the fact of the matter that is unconstitutional.
Okay, so I can prove that civil asset forfeiture is unconstitutional without having to say that this specific Supreme Court justice said
I don't think
that
you can
it was or
prove it
wasn't.
without having. I don't think you can prove it without having like a Supreme Court argument to
Look,
back
no,
you up,
I'm
or
gonna,
at least
no,
showing that it's being gone through the courts.
Like, no, you want to call me out on this, and then you say I must use an appeal to authority. Go fuck yourself. No,
Hold on, it's
I can
not-
simply say
okay,
that it's a
hold on.
violation of the
I
Fourth
need the
Amendment.
hold on. Wait, real quick, and then you can go.
ridiculous. Come
Wait,
on.
okay, let me just do one quick thing because he's using so many debate terms apparently. So a fallacious appeal to authority is when you appeal to an authority that doesn't have the authority to make a ruling on the particular thing you're talking about. When we're talking about what is constitutional and what is not constitutional,
That's not
that is
true.
literally the job of the Supreme Court.
That's
it's not a
not true.
fallacious appeal to
No,
authority.
that's
It
not
is the
true.
true authority
You're
on what is
saying-
constitutional.
No,
That's our
you-
entire system is set up. Okay, Soyadel, you can go.
No, that's not
We're
true.
gonna toss it to Soy. We're just gonna pause. We're gonna toss it to Soy. He said the least talking time. Go ahead, Soy.
Okay, so I think a more effective route of conversation with this is in Washington here, we had Initiative 1639. This is an age restriction on buying firearms.
I can't believe
We
he's
had
so
sheriffs
mad
who
that I'm just
refused
calling
to
out his
enforce it.
bullshit.
And guess what? It's not that there's some mechanics behind the scenes and this is determining like A versus B, what actually is going to happen. And that means that ultimate responsibility lies with the people, because that's not reality. The reality is that there are humans involved everywhere. And so, yes, we've got some redneck sheriffs all over the state of Washington, and they refuse to enforce this thing that was passed by the people of Washington, mostly Seattleites, where gun violence is a problem. And so we have this constant conflict in Washington state where liberal left side of the state, conservative right side of the state, separated by the mountains, and on both sides. And so, yes, it is the reality in Washington state that we do not have ultimate control over every facet. And we can try and we can wring our hands and we can wish that it were true, that we could just pass a law by popular vote and have it actually enforced. But no, it's not. And it's messy.
I agree that there can be issues, but again, you're appealing to sheriffs on enforcing law. Sheriffs are literally elected officials. If you don't like them, then vote them out.
Okay, but who's electing sheriffs? Do I get to vote on a sheriff in Spokane County? No. It's the people in Spokane County. And so are we all of a sudden part of the same state or not? Is someone going to be able to
it depends
be an
on
18-year-old? Be an 18-year-old, buy a gun in Issaquah and drive it into Seattle and shoot people up? And that's actually happened. It happened in 2020. Probably not Issaquah, probably Kent or something like that. But yet it is happening. And that's why we're trying to pass laws like this to reduce gun violence in my city.
Sure, but I mean, like that's kind of like part of how our system is set up, right? Like there might be people who are irritated in Chicago that people are bringing in guns from out of state because the legislation is done differently. But I mean, like what? I mean, if you don't live in that particular area, I wouldn't expect you to be able to exercise any authority over the people in that particular area.
Well, I mean, that's what the federal government is for, right?
Not really, because most enforcement for most laws are like states' issues, right?
It kind of sounds like you're a minarchist localist.
No, that's true. No, that's true. But like, for instance, if you
heard it here, folks. Give more money to the ATF.
During after the Civil War, right? Where the lower states, the southern states, weren't enforcing the laws, right? Like as we're set, like the federal government came and imposed its will, right? Like the federal government can come in. If a police department is doing something, particularly terrible, then the federal government will come in and will impose oversight on that, right? Mm-hmm. So like we can actually do that to a certain extent. Now that's not like the final answer to this, right? Obviously that has its limits, but like when we feel like certain parts of the country aren't doing are failing us in terms of government, we use the federal government itself to impose our will on them, right?
Yeah, I mean, New Hampshire is a great example of how you can challenge that as well, right? Because in New Hampshire they've elected several nullification laws, one of them being firearms nullification. So in the state of New Hampshire, it is illegal from a state level in order to enforce any gun laws, even if they are federal gun laws, forcing the federal government to bring in the ATF or the FBI or something in order to enforce any gun legislation in the state of New Hampshire.
Sure, and I think we see that happening with marijuana laws, where federally Schedule 1 drug. Sure. All I'm saying is that ultimately, you can probably find examples of cops that don't enforce certain things, or even maybe police departments don't enforce things, but police are not totally divorced from the legislative process. You do have a great deal of control you do have a great deal of control as a citizen over who your chief of police is, over the policies that they have, even over the types of enforcement they do. But even if these might go awry at some point, but I don't think it's an institutional failure when that happens.
You don't have choice as an individual. You collectively supposedly have a choice of a non-voluntary system of voting, and if you lose the vote, you just get whoever the fuck you get. And that's really the issue here, is that conflict is baked into the system of democracy.
That's a necessary buy-in to every civilization, though, right?
No,
even in a 100% voluntary situation where multiple parties come together to negotiate something, it is unlikely, nay, impossible, that every single negotiator is going to get exactly what they want.
It's not about getting what they want. It's about whether or not the situation is voluntary. Because if you don't like it and you don't want to accept that compromise, then you can divest from that situation. I can't divest from
but depending on how the other people around you feel, that might not be the case. You might not have that option. Unless the same society that has no rules or regulations is also somehow has a monopoly on enforcing nonviolence on everybody.
You don't need a monopoly on nonviolence. You can just
Okay,
have
so
voluntary
let's
systems.
say that you've got 10 people that are coming together to decide on how to use like a certain forest or a river that they have like some shared property and they all have like easements on it, or they just have property in this area. And let's say 9 of them come to an agreement, but one guy is not agreeing it. What's to keep the 9 people from just steamrolling
So what
to
you're
one
talking
dude?
about, what you're talking about is common property as opposed to public property and private property, right? So there are easement rights that are baked in because these people have been using this water collectively for a period of time. Right? So they built a neighborhood there. They've all been doing it. And they're saying, hey, we need to do something better with this water so we can get more water. But we have to get everyone to agree to some extent because there's easement rights. Well, the fact of the matter is that these people have easement rights. And so that if you are the private investor or the individual that chooses to build a dam or build something, you have to maintain those easement rights or you have to pay restitution to those individuals.
Okay, but hold on. You evaded it and pivoted in the most boring way possible.
No, I didn't. I just tried to simplify how.
Wait, I gotta get an answer. I want to get one answer from this instead of him being able to avoid it with easements rights. What if you have people?
Does he need the answer?
What if you have people that have disagreements that have the easement rights? What if you've got 10 people and all of them have rights to the easement? All of them have easement rights to shared property, but one of them disagrees with the other 9. What do the other 9
divest.
do?
And
Why does
restitution have to be paid.
Force him? Wait, you'd force him to leave? How is that voluntary?
No,
you negotiate.
Divest, and then that person can voluntarily leave or voluntarily join the others.
Wait,
Very
when
simple.
you say divest, what does divest mean to you? That when I hear divest, I'm thinking like you get rid of all of your rights or ownerships to a particular thing and you withdraw. What is that?
You get paid out. You get bought out. You get paid.
What if you don't
for
want to
your
get bought
portion.
out? You like the forest as it is, and all of the other ones want to vote to steamroll it and turn it into a lumber mill or something. You're like, no, I like that. And you're the one against the 9. What do you do there? You don't want to divest.
But you're not a private property owner. You don't own the property. You have common easement. It's not the same thing as a private property. If you homestead portion of the forest, it's your fucking private property. No one can tell you what to do with it. And if someone else wants to homestead it to turn it into a lumber mill,
and this
it's
is
their
why this is
private
dumb,
property.
Because essentially this is conflict, right? Because once
It's
again,
not
a person is
conflict,
not gonna
just
get
because
what
you
they
don't
want.
understand
No,
it.
you're saying because you can walk away from this, right? Then everything's okay, right? Then essentially not conflict, even though the resource that you want is gone, right? You've lost access to that. You've lost access to the river, the forest, whatever the fuck, right?
You're talking about common property. You're not talking about private property.
Destiny, Steven,
You didn't own
right?
it.
Like you are being drawn in by the siren song.
Yeah, because
of an
everything is turning into an ANCAP debate. But if
I know.
we're going to do an ANCAP debate, let's do an ANCAP debate instead of him making like... Because you make like a bunch of like snide comments, so it's like...
I want to focus on institutions because our friend Erudite, I think, had a really good question. I really want to focus on that, right? So let's maybe focus on voting, okay? Let's focus on that and let's assume that like a state exists. I don't know, like crazy, right? Like let's try that.
Well, maybe.
I hate voting because it's an involuntary force to monopolize power in the government and kill
Oh,
us.
fucking! You were fucking bringing him over, boys. He used to be a libertarian. He's coming back, boys. Problem is, he didn't read his libertarian philosophy, and he still doesn't know it.
Maybe the question is, does voting fix any of the problems we've come up with? And I'd say in the case of the forest, no. Voting means that 6 people get to usurp the rights of the other 4 people, and they've just got no out. They don't get paid out. They don't get anything they want. They were voted out, and they get to put up with it. And that's sort of the question is in small communities, the libertarian perspective is, oh, there can be a better way, but that's not reality. So let's move up a level away from libertarian small communityville and say, can we use voting to fix the Supreme Court?
Well, we were talking about the police, and I tried to do an olive branch, and then Destiny got triggered.
Oh no! Come on, come on, move back.
Yeah. So, use voting. So you're saying,
I have a
can we use
solution.
institute voting? Is it an effective tool to change other institutions or to impose the will of the people wherever? Okay. So I think that's really interesting. So I think that voting, the problem is that it's not an advanced tool. It's a blunt tool, right? Rather than a scalpel, it's a very blunt tool, especially by the time you get to the general election, right? By the time you get to a general election, as Obama said, you got, was it fish or like meat, right? Like, or beef, whatever the fuck, right? Like that's your only choices. Taking a step back, you through the primary system, you have a lot more options actually to affect your system. Like the individual that your party puts up to vote is decided there. That is where you can force your values, and then from there, it's assuming it's a contested race, it's a 50-50 chance, especially on the presidential level, right?
Are we forgetting Hillary Clinton and Bernie, where they just cheated to make Hillary Clinton the nominee? Like,
they didn't cheat to make Hillary Clinton the nominee. What are we talking about?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I thought we were all in agreement that like
you gotta lay
Bernie,
off the RT man.
I mean, like the
what
RT,
was the cheating part?
When they gave debate questions to Hillary Clinton and admitted doing that ahead of time.
So one person acting in an improper manner didn't mean they cheated to give them the election, right? Do you think that sole thing is what tipped the scales for Hillary? She was pulling ahead the entire time.
Is that the sole thing? No, of
time?
course not. I'm not saying it's the sole thing, right? I think also, the idea of like, super delegates is problematic. Problematic.
Oh boy,
the superdelegates didn't make a difference. Bernie was never winning that election, just like he didn't win the second time.
Well, no. I mean, why did Joe Biden get elected? He got elected not because anybody liked Joe Biden, but because they believed he was electable. Why wouldn't that be the same thing if people have this belief that the party wants Hillary Clinton and that the superdelegates want Hillary Clinton? And we know all of the time that when media tells people that one candidate is more viable, that people want to fit in and they don't necessarily vote their values, but they often vote the way they think they should vote based off of like the rest of society wants.
Then explain how Trump won.
It's real simple. He was on a debate stage and a Fox News anchor asked him about all the horrible things he said to women. And he responded with, I said those things about Rosie O'Donnell. And all of a sudden the right knew that they had a cultural icon that could fight SJW politics.
Okay, so you just gave me this. You gave me this whole analysis of how the media programs our brains to vote for the most. But Trump was able to break through that whole system with one joke.
No, that's not what I just said. What you did is you attempted to reframe it.
I'm not reframing anything.
Yes, you are. No, that's not at all what I said. I said we know from evidence.
Do the pivot straw man one now.
Well, you did both of those, but it's okay.
You gotta take an improv class. You gotta go with yes and it'll be more entertaining. So I promise.
I mean, I'm just saying. Like he mischaracterized what I said, so I'm just correcting it super quick.
It's fine.
Yeah,
it's fine.
I'd like to hear the question the Prime is trying to ask, if that's all right.
Yeah. We'll just let Destiny get away with it. It's fine. He'll do it all night. He knows he can't win.
You guys were going to be. Looping down the ANCAP train is fun, but I don't think we necessarily want.
What's an ANCAP train?
Well, it's an ANCAP train in the sense that like we there's a disagreement here. Like in your arguments, Fabe, I'm not trying to mischaracterize you. You're presenting it in some senses like some oppression, some degree of like some degree of enforcement upon the will of a person or violation of a person's will, some degree of non-voluntary integration in society.
No.
is in of itself a failure of the institution.
I was just making the simplistic argument just now to the idea that like voting, right, like that you can vote in the primaries and it has an effect. And I'm saying, well, yeah, but there are institutions that kind of keep that power from being fully democratized. I'm just pointing out a fact.
I think Prime is trying to get. I think this is why I wanted to throw it to Prime. Is I think Prime is trying to get at like what degree, not what is a failure of our institutions per se, but when does a failure become a failed institution? When does a problem become a fundamental problem?
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry, I'll shut up.
Yeah. So okay. So voting isn't simply putting in like your slip into the ballot box, which I'm not sure if anyone actually does that, maybe in some territories. But voting isn't just that, right? I think something that people don't understand is that there is a whole set of mechanics behind that. There are people, right? Like people who run the voting booths, and beyond that, there's like a party mechanisms that decide on these individual rules, right? And people don't pay attention to that, like at all, right? So I'm actually trying to work off what our friend Fabian Scott said previously, right? Talking about like how some people thought it was unfair what happened to Bernie Sanders. There was that moment, I believe it was in the Nevada caucuses, if I'm remembering correctly, right? Where the people running the caucus decided to like, if I'm remembering this correctly, and I could be wrong, but cut off voting at a certain point in time.
Yes.
And yes, exactly, and ended up screwing over Bernie. So like that sucks. Like that's what people think of as an institution failing. And so to counteract that, Bernie's people actually took over that party, right? They took over that system in the following years. So
I don't know if you were ever in a. Okay, sorry, but
I'm almost done. I swear I'm almost done. When we're talking about reforming the system, the reforming system has to be about that as well, right? So when people usually think about voting reform, they're thinking about like the rules of like, well, how do I get to the ballot box? How many ballot boxes or voting machines are there, and in what districts, right? Which is very important, right? Which is usually the 12 people use for suppression. But behind that, there's a whole mechanism that most people don't understand, and this is part of the institutional rot that people tend to forget.
Okay, I'll actually back you up on that, but it's also why voting in a lot of caucuses did get cut off, because I was in the room during the 2015, Democratic primary caucus when the Bernie bros were literally, and as guys who look like me who were soying out about how corrupt Hillary Clinton was, were literally yelling at their local LD at their local precinct about how bad Hillary was and how he was like, you had a moral duty to vote for Bernie because the capitalism is gonna like ruin us all. And
sounds like a lot of conflict.
Is it is a lot of conflict, but that's where I think that conflict is helping our system, is within party politics. And I think that we have arrived at many favorable outcomes in my local and my state party politics. However, I also think that there is this element of controlled opposition, and that's what we're talking about when we see things like Trump get into the primary and Trump beats Hillary for some strange reason, is that our voters get disaffected by the first past the post system. So please look up the various ways of election reform. I'm in favor of any of them because first past the post, the majority, the tyranny of the majority is a terrible thing. We should have either ranked choice or approval voting. I think both are great. We can talk about why both are great.
That would still be tyranny of the majority, for record. It would just be tyranny of the super majority.
Well, okay, we could talk about it
would be an improvement.
Voting.
It would be an improvement, right?
Right.
If 70% had to agree as opposed to 51, but it would still be tyranny of the majority.
You want to go all the way to super democracy where a single veto can like override everyone, but we're not going to get to that in our lifetimes. We're going to get to approval voting.
For sure. I just wanted to point out that it would still be tyranny of the majority.
No, and Scott,
okay,
no, that's fine. And I actually I think that point is fine. But I think that in terms of voting as it stands, we have the primary system, right? Like now you could say if we fail from the beginning because that primary system is focused on two different parties, right? And those are your options. So fair enough, and I'll give you that. But beyond that, within that, you do have choices, and people aren't exercising those choices. So people aren't paying attention to your primary elections when there is a progressive with the policies to actually solve the problems, right? Like you're not actually paying attention to that. You're not seeing that before you're not even paying attention to the midterm elections. Fuck that, right? Like people don't pay attention to their local, state, and federal. Well, they pay attention to the federal elections. But I guess another problem with this is the options, right? Like, can voting ever even be fixed? This is, I guess, an even more basic question. Can voting ever be fixed? Because, yes, people aren't paying attention, but there's a lot to pay attention to. I, myself, do not know who my local state senator is, right? I don't know who my city council member is. So that's a failing on my part, right? On me. But I'm more plugged in than the majority of the country, right? The people who are watching this debate are more plugged in than the majority of the country. But I think a lot of them also don't know who their local politicians are. Right, so like, can people have enough time to make all these decisions?
Well, I think another thing we have to point out, if we're going to have a discussion about democracy, and I'm going to olive branch and like talk to the status as a status, right? Is in the 1950s we set up a ton of fucking laws throughout the country and states that eventually became universal to stop the rise of communism. And while obviously stopping, communists from gaining political power is probably somewhat of a noble goal, right? You don't want fucking commies running a goddamn thing. But
clearly not.
That being said, what we did is we, again, and this has been the habit of our country since its founding, we limited power and we limited democracy. And one of the things we did is a lot of states require 30,000, 50,000 signatures in order to get ballot access. They require fuck tons of money. And then, of course, once you have those debate systems, most of those debate systems are companies that, that work in conjunction with the state government that already has a two-power system. And then, so it's almost impossible for third-party candidates to ever be able to debate these candidates. So, I mean, if you want to talk a bit about like democracy and how can we have more democracy, which isn't something I necessarily believe, but if you want to have that conversation, one of the things we've got to do is we've got to allow third party, like we have to drastically reduce this idea that third party candidates have to get tens of thousands of signatures to end up on the ballot. And then the state will throw out everything.
But would that solve the problem? Would that actually solve the problem? At least the one that I'm talking about in this particular instance, right? Because
not from my perspective, no. But I mean, it might make it better.
Sure. Okay. And I'll grant you that. I'll grant you that. However, that's just more choices that people aren't even bothering to make, right? Or to understand. So on the local level, you can have third-party candidates. It's actually easier for them to break in on that level. But people still don't know who their politicians are. They're not looking at those local races. And again, that's a failure on my part personally. But I think it's a failure that a lot of other people share with me. And so like.
I think most people just want to be left alone.
I think Destiny made a great point, like talking about like the sheriffs, right? Like you can, you have the option to utilize democracy and decide who your sheriff is, right? Assuming that you even have a great options there between like
or an elected sheriff. Some sheriffs aren't elected.
Yeah. Exactly, right? So that's assuming a lot of things. But even if you do, right? People aren't paying attention to that. I'm not paying attention to that. Actually, I don't think I can elect my sheriff. But like, I'm not paying attention to that either. So, like, if we can't get past that point, then saying just vote is not going to work.
Well, okay. So I think that, introducing more voting systems will actually help candidates form coalitions. Like if we talk about approval or ranked choice, then it's not going to be as adversarial. You will have candidates going around and canvassing for one another. They'd be like, yes, put me first, or okay, it's fine that you put them first. Please put me second, or please check both boxes, because we are compatriots in, I almost said comrades, but comrades. We are comrades in this race. We are moving together. And I want to thank Fabian for helping to make America communist again. Thank you very much. But
if your county, if Seattle wants to be fucking communist and they leave the rest of the fucking country alone, fucking let them be communists. They can starve for all I care.
The more money Amazon puts into our local races, the more communist we become. It's guaranteed. But back to the point that Prime asked, can everyone have time to get better informed? I think that voting reform will assist in that. I think that a lot of things like open ballot access will help with that. I think that like public media, everything that we're doing here, we're streaming about politics. We have more time, we have more ability to become better informed because of what we're doing right now. And that's why you're all amazing.
Do you think, and I'm just curious, right? Do you think the fact that we have like this first past the post, two-party system leaves people in like a nihilistic view of politics where they don't bother to inform themselves because they're thinking it's a Republican or a Democrat, they both work with corporations, they both fuck me over, one wants a 37% corporate tax, one wants a 35%, like what the fuck is the point? Why would I even inform myself? And do you think that more ballot access would have people more excited to get involved in politics or to like understand what's going on in politics?
If you had a hope of winning or getting something that you want, absolutely.
Okay, I'm just curious.
I think it would help around the margins, certainly. But
I tend to agree. I think more people would like look into libertarianism, for example, if they had any ability to win anything.
But beyond that, it's like the literal time investment to learn all these things, right? It takes time to have a proper understanding. So like I would love to inflate my own self-importance like anyone else here because we're streamers. But to Seattle's point, or Soyel's point, I'm not sure like how helpful this is, right? Like I think it is to a certain extent helpful to have these conversations, right? And I think we do provide some value, but just like this isn't enough, right? Like the things that are blocking people from educating themselves are literally not having enough time, not being paid enough working long hours, like not having access to childcare. All these things are barriers keeping people from getting involved either within these communities or the larger political project. So when we're saying that voting is failing, like and so many people aren't even taking part in that system, well, there's lots of reasons, not just apathy. One of them is apathy, certainly, but I don't have the time, right? Like there's so many other things I got to worry about. I don't have the institutional support of the state, right? I don't have childcare. I don't have I have to work hard to get my kid in college. All these things add up and keep people from getting involved, even though there are answers within politics to these questions.
I would add two things to your list. Number one, I would add the insistence upon the nuclear family and the way that that has been destroyed, but also the fact that the nuclear family is not enough, and city planning and the way that we have changed as a culture to have mommy, daddy, and a couple of kids, and then, you know, of course, maybe we have daddy, maybe we don't. I think that even that's not enough. I think many of the difficulties that we face is that we don't have extended family in the household any longer, and that city planning has a lot to do with that, but also our culture. And I would also add that as the government grows more powerful, the complexity of the government grows as well. And so it becomes more difficult to understand the state because the state is more complex. And, you know, I think if we, you know, obviously if we were more libertarian and we got the state less involved, it would be easier to be involved in politics.
Can I pose you guys a question super quickly? It's something that I've been wondering, and I am not decided on this. The American democratic system, it's two-party. There's two things that I think are really unique about it from a Canadian perspective specifically, which is that it's exclusively two-party, and almost always third parties just don't really exist or have any attraction. And then there's this emphasis on diverting power back to the state, whereas in Canada, a lot of power like criminality and stuff like that is very, very federalized. So one thing I've wondered is that when the system was created, right, when the founding fathers established some of these systems, and I know that they've changed since the founding fathers, but essentially when some of these systems were established, do you think that it worked for the time and era? But now that we've got modern technology and a number of different things, is this why the institutions are getting so like fractured and complicated? Is because the system was actually designed in a way that just isn't adjusting well to like modern era technology? Curious your guys' thoughts.
I'm going to agree with Scott like beforehand and say no, that previously like they weren't working either. I think that our institutions were designed with a skeptical look at democracy, right? I think within our common understanding of the Constitution, in the founding, that like everyone was just like pro-democracy and we want more democracy. The founding fathers must have wanted that, but if you look at the original Constitution, they didn't, right?
No,
like they didn't. The Senate is a check on democracy. The Supreme Court's a check on democracy. The fact that we don't vote directly for the president is a check on democracy. These are people who are skeptical of the people in and of themselves.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, the 17th Amendment radically changes the way that the United States government functions, right? Like the idea of the 17th Amendment, before the 17th Amendment was that states, that you would be involved in local politics and you would pick representatives for your state, and then that state would send two senators that were experts, right? Maybe doctors, they might be constitutional lawyers, but they might be engineers, they might be businessmen, and their job was to ensure that an elite group of learned individuals, well, learned men, let's be honest, right? Learned white men, right? Would go to the government and would be a check on the House of Representatives, on democracy itself. And they would also be a check on the federal government from violating the rights of states, right? But once the 17th Amendment comes in, it becomes another popular vote. And that has radically changed the way that our country works at all. It drastically increases the federal government. So this is a big thing that has drastically increased the scope of the federal government. And then, of course, the first big change would be the Civil War, right? The Civil War radically changes the size of the government and radically changes how much corporations are involved. I mean, the term lobbyist comes from President Grant because he realized that he could meet with corporate representatives in hotel lobbies as a means of like circumnavigating any ideas of corruption or laws. And then we just kind of made it a regular practice because he wanted to deeply punish the South during Reconstruction, because of the Civil War, et cetera.
I didn't know that. That's actually really interesting. Thank you for telling me about that. But yeah, so there's a deep skepticism of democracy, and then of course, right, the Fifth Compromise. There is the slavery in general at the start of Constitution. So I don't think it was ever truly working. These institutions were always failing in some way, and the fact that women couldn't vote, like all these things add up to a very limited, very parsed view of democracy that works for the elite, that reinforces elite opinion.
Well, I think more so it was actually to try and mix all of the different forms of government, right? Because you got to think, like, the only democracy that like there's no democracy like constitutional republics of any size or scope before the United States comes around. Like, it had been experimented with a few times, and of course you had direct and different forms of democracy throughout history, but they decided, okay, we want to enshrine Enlightenment liberal values and go against monarchy, right? But they wanted every form of government, right? So they wanted a plutocracy, they wanted a democracy, they wanted a republic, and they wanted a monarchy. And that's why you have a president. It's a symbolic representation of the monarchy. That's why you have a Senate. It's the plutocracy. That's why you have federalism, right? So that you have localization and federal, well, it's federalism, right? And then of course that's why you have the House of Representatives, so that you have like the democracy of the people. And also they had the Electoral College, so that you wouldn't have places of large population and industrialization, even though they kind of they obviously didn't see the Industrial Revolution to its fullest extent, but they didn't want large population centers being able to just like completely run over everybody else that had different cultures, different values, and different things that were important to America, right? So, I mean, we're just in a totally different system than what the Founding Fathers envisioned.
Or more accurately, it was broken.
Yeah, does that answer your question, Erudite?
Yeah, it does.
And on that note, I guess the question that I would propose to you guys is, like, you seem to agree, and I think everyone seems to agree to some extent, that our institutions are like failing in some regard. I think that's pretty obvious. And like, if that weren't the case, I don't think we would have anything to vote about to begin with, right? But I think the spirit of the original question is, to what degree do the failures that we're facing indicate an inability of the institutions, namely through voting, an indication that these systems and our ability to access change and like gain the change that we want? And to what extent have those systems fundamentally failed? Right, and to what extent do the failures that we're talking about indicate some sort of fundamental, unaddressable failures of our institutions, like voting?
I'm going to challenge that head on. I think that even with as broken as our institutions are, it's still your own fault if you're not involved to the level necessary to affect change. And by that I mean, you absolutely need to reach out to your party politics. You need to reach out to your local representatives. And if you're not doing any of that, or if you're doing all of that and it's still failing, well, at least you have an idea of how to organize people in order to make a change in the system.
Yeah, I would agree.
And I think that's the way forward.
I think, to take a book out of the communists' hands, with exception of step 3, I think step 3 was a dismal failure from Lenin's dual power theory. But steps 1 and 2, I think, are another important thing that we need to be looking at, not just voting, right? So if we want to meaningfully do something, I do agree with Soyadl that you should be involved with party politics. A lot of ANCAPs will yell at me about that because they say that, voting is violence, but I would say that it's defensive violence, and we should try and reduce the power of the state with that. But also, I think you should look at dual power theory, which is that you should do like the Free State Project. You should be moving into areas and congregating with people that have like-minded views and like-minded things, and pushing away from this idea that we're all just going to magically get along, and like that we can just have this tyranny of the majority system fighting back and forth, but instead move into a community that represents your values and then vote that way, so that local voting actually means something, because you're in a community of people that 90% agree with you.
Did you really just say just move? You did. You
Yes.
said it.
Yeah, just move.
Stephen,
Yes.
I'm curious.
I'll own that shit.
Are there institutions that, within the American context, are there institutions that you believe are failing, or will you prove to me that you are a liberal scumbag who loves the status quo?
Wait, say that again? Sorry.
I embedded a beautiful insult in there. All right.
I think the question you asked, if I heard you right, I think it was one I was going to ask. Which institutions do we think are failing? I guess. Which ones?
Yeah, what do you think?
I don't think any of our institutions are failing, but
I knew it.
yeah, I think they all work as intended. I think that people blame the system for what are genuine differences of opinion of people. Yeah,
But
I
the
think it's
system.
easier to externalize. It's easier to externalize those issues onto the systems instead of looking at the actual division that's probably getting worse and worse every single day in the United States.
But I think the system is institutionalized, forced compromise with people that disagree with you, which is conflict.
So hold on the case of like gun rights, right? And us wanting common sense gun reform, right? Which is a general package, a very light gun reform that we can't actually get through. That was it. There's like some ridiculous proportion of the country, like 85% or something, agrees for like really basic things when it comes to gun reform that we can't get through. Like, do you think?
I don't know if there are people proposing legislation that would limit it to those basic common, quote unquote, common sense gun reforms. If somebody's proposed that legislation in the Senate, I'd be interested in hearing about it, or the House. But like for somebody to come out, because there are a few things that poll really well. Like I think one is closing the private sale loophole to fill out the federal forms, the ATF forms. And I think there was one other, I don't think it was red flag laws, but there was one other thing that polls like pretty highly with most people.
I think it's like universal background checks. I think is like
it might be like universal background check, but that's closing the private sale loophole. But the waiting periods might have been the one where I think there might have been like over like 60% of Americans are okay with like a 1 week waiting period. But usually when people go to propose legislation, I don't know if anybody has done like a limited gun thing versus it seems like people always want to go farther to like banning assault rifles or magazine sizes federally or stuff like that.
Or they put poison pills in it, right? Like, so the original assault weapons ban, for example, also had the Violence Against Women Act attached to it. Like the idea that like mass shooters for AR-15s has anything to do with violence against women and domestic violence is like
poison pill.
It's a poison pill, right? The idea
That's
is
not a poison pill.
Yes, it is, because
I mean, it's a poison pill if you're a psychotic.
No,
right?
it's
like,
not.
Sure.
No, it's not a poison pill if you're someone that believes in the Second Amendment but doesn't want to vote against a bill called the Violence Against Women Act, right? And so what this did is it forced certain like people that may have thought of themselves as staunch Second Amendment conservatives to vote for this bill because they knew if they didn't vote for this bill, whoever was running against them would go, this person voted against the Violence Against Women Act. He wants your wives beaten, etc.
That's the opposite of a poison pill. That's an opposite of a poison pill. Poison pill is to kill. It's to kill a bill to make sure it doesn't get passed.
Okay. So. I mean, it's a poison. It's a poison. All right. Sorry, I'm poisoning the well. I apologize.
Fair enough. Okay. But fuck. What did Steven say? I was going to respond.
They're like Biden passed like some weak bipartisan thing recently, like a month ago, that I think gives it allows states fundings for. It allows state funding if they want to set up red flag laws, and then I think they tried to close the boyfriend loophole, meaning like I think it used to be the case that if you were a husband and you had a domestic abuse thing, you couldn't get like a firearm, but now they apply that to boyfriends as well, or people in relationships that have prior felonies, like stuff like that. So not much, but like a little bit, like that got passed. But I think the biggest problem, there's two huge problems that people have where they keep going back to this, the institutions are failing, we can't pass what we want, when it comes to analyzing these institutions. The first problem is people will always say, why can't we just get X done? Where X is actually an incredibly complicated topic where different solutions poll differently. So we saw this with progressives. Progressives would wonder with healthcare. Why don't we have healthcare? 75% or 74% of Americans polled said that they want the government to provide a free option. And that was true, but 24% of people polled said that they wanted private insurance banned, with the government being the sole provider of health insurance, right? So it's the same legislation, but how you ask the question, what ends up in the legislation can vary how people feel about it. So that's one thing for complex things. Then the second thing is national polling on any issue never matters ever, because things don't ever get passed at the national level, they get passed at the House and the Senate. So you can have 60% support for something, but if a lot of that is coming from like very blue states, you know, like New York and California are 80% in favor of something, but you don't have the votes in the Senate to do it, then it doesn't really matter, you know?
No, absolutely. I think that's a very good point. But would that in itself be a failure of the institution? So that we that
would be the opposite.
We're balkanized.
That would be the opposite.
Depends on what you believe the function of the institution is. If you feel like the function of our federal legislature is to pass any legislation with 51% of the popular support, then you would say that the institution has failed. but it's pretty obvious to see with the way that our legislature is established. That's not the function, is to pass 51% popular, right?
And this is something I wanted to hone in on. So thank you for saying that, because like, again, these things haven't changed much, right? These institutions, grand institutions, except for like the 17th Amendment, which is a very good point, right? These things actually haven't changed much. But still, people have a feeling that this is failed, right? And so what does that actually mean to people, right? Does it mean that, well, it seems like... Go ahead.
Yeah, we can argue about two things. We can argue about a fact of the matter and a feeling about a fact, right? People can feel that something has failed. That's a fundamentally different question than if it has failed. I think that people feel like things have failed when they don't get what they want. That's what I think.
I think the real issue here, right, is, and let me get through it before flipping out saying I'm doing ANCAP shit. Let me just fucking say it. Democracy is a form of forced compromise, right? Where multiple people have to come together and they have to, they have to tacitly agree to not murder each other, despite not getting what it is that they want, and despite their freedoms being violated because they're forced to compromise in something that they don't want to do. The problem is that in and of itself, but I think this problem is exacerbated when you have political polarization, right? Because once you have political polarization, the flaw of democracy, I think, becomes so much more obvious. When two sides are saying, hey, I want a 35% tax, and like other side is saying, hey, I want a 30% tax, and then you guys, and like that's like 90% of the country, and then you settle on 32.5. Like most people, they're not up in arms about that because their positions weren't that different. But as political polarization comes around, right, and one side says, hey, abortion should be a legal right for everyone, and the other side says you're a fucking murderer, there's not really a compromise there, right? Like there's no such thing as compromising between those two positions, unless of course you're libertarianism and you believe in evictionism, but of course we don't want to hear those answers.
That's a really good point. No. I'm except for the libertarian part, like ignore that part. But like I think the political polarization, I think you're really focusing in on something that's essential here, right? I was going to look at this through the lens of the media, but we can, in general, like the idea is political polarization. How do we get here, right? How is it that we have two sides of this nation that refuses to, that doesn't even understand the same facts, right? Like we don't agree on the facts at all. Like what has led us here? And
I think the issue,
the corruption of media, probably.
I think the issue is two things have happened. Is people always talk about how we're becoming more divided, but I don't actually think the issue is becoming more divided. I think the issue is becoming more and more homogenous, just in two separate areas. People are withdrawing into these bubbles that are rigidly enforcing all of their views onto each other, and then these bubbles are moving away from each other. So, for instance, if you take a look at all the social media platforms, they pretty hardcore enforce like a certain type of political ideology, and it gets so enforced that when you see certain things publicly, you're not even ready for it because you don't think it's possible. Right? This is what we all experienced in 2016 with Trump. When Trump ran for the election, every single person in this country, well, anybody that was plugged into any mainstream media, any academic, anything, knew that he had no chance of even surviving the primary. There was 0% chance of somebody saying those things making it through. But he did, and then he won the election. That was a huge wake-up call. It's like, holy fuck. We are living like matter and antimatter in the same world, and we like don't even see each other. Like there are half of Americans fundamentally don't even know the other half exist. Even though we can inhabit similar areas, we go to different restaurants, we engage with different media, we're on different social media platforms, we have different circles of friends, and that issue of people pulling apart into separate groups, and then the homogeneity in those groups being hardcore enforced is like rapidly accelerating like the political division. Like if we had a group of 10 people, of 2 libertarians, 2 communists, 4 Democrats, and 4 Republicans all debating minimum wage, right? And the hardcore people on the left are asking for $30 an hour, and the hardcore people on the right are asking for no minimum wage because it's oppressive for whatever reason, right? You're probably going to settle somewhere in the middle, which is okay, even if everybody's a little upset about it. But in the world we're at now, where it was like a $15 an hour minimum wage. You see this happen in real life. Look at where the left has gone on that now that they've removed all of the Republicans from that conversation. They don't even ask for 20. They say things like $25 or $30 an hour is slave labor, right? Like it should all be equal across the board. Like that conversation has gone super hard because it's a homogenous group of people, and
that was 6 years ago.
Well, we shouldn't live with each other. That's my answer. Like fucking, I shouldn't be forced to compromise with them.
Whoa. Why didn't? Okay, so if you think that we're in these bubbles, did you knock doors for any political
Yes,
candidate?
he did.
I mean, outside of Georgia.
Georgia and Omaha were the 2 that I did. Yeah.
Okay. In 2016, I knocked doors for Hillary. Anyone else?
Nope.
No, she's a shill. Fuck that.
Fuck Hillary.
Soy.
I voted for Hillary.
The foundation.
We should put them all under the prison.
But I'm saying the knocking doors thing, and I would never knock that effort as somebody that's done it. I think that's great if you're doing it. But I'm not talking about the political engagement. I'm talking about our cultural lived reality that we are, like the academic institutions and our cultural institutions are very, very, very far left of where even the average Democrat is. They're incredibly far left and they're very insulated. And then like wherever the fuck Republicans exist, because I'll be honest, I don't fucking know. They're in their whole, I guess, Fox News and then fucking Facebook.
Facebook.
Yeah.
Fox
they're
News
in their
is
own
not,
world.
no.
Which
No, no, no,
which
no.
of our cultural institutions are far left?
You need to talk to Lauren
Like
more. I
literally
never thought I'd
everything
say
related
that.
to entertainment. So like Hollywood, our TV shows,
Hollywood
our
is
music.
far left.
Yeah.
So hold on. If you mean like if by far left you mean that like they accept that trans people exist, right? And they show like gay couples kissing, then I'm sure whatever, right?
Far left is in
but,
like the subtext to every single fucking movie is going to be how capitalism is evil, and it's going to be a bunch of like Trump jokes and like
what
this.
the fuck are you talking about, Destiny? What the fuck is
there's
this?
Snowpiercer and Hunger Games, and I guess that's it.
Like what? Like no, all of it
Dog.
assumes that capitalism exists and that it's great. What the fuck are you talking about?
Wait,
Like, every so often.
wait, hold on. Jesus, hold on.
What?
Like, what? I feel like first of all, like the Batman movie was a huge thing. There's literally lines in it about it. The Boys is like a massive shitting
He's a
on.
billionaire.
Sure, I'm just saying that like you can't say that like you can't say how does the left own Hollywood when like it feels like that's the subtext of so many different movies. It's popularly shit on like rich white people, blah blah blah. And that's
Well,
like a big.
no,
theme
I
of,
think
like,
the
a
problem-
lot
I
of-
think the
Batman
problem
is
is
great man fallacy.
Before you guys jump in, I just want to with Stephen. So maybe we're not connecting here. All right. So when I say how is it like far left, right? Like I say like I don't see like progressive. Well, not progressive. Far left issues being represented, right? It happens every so often, true. It does, right? And there is, and I think you see more of a skepticism of capitalism and certain properties, certain entertainment properties than we have in the past. That's absolutely the case.
Okay, hold on. Let me reframe what I'm saying. Maybe me saying far left wasn't fair. Not far left, but very left. Is that okay? Like they're not having like 20% of their cast are trans people, but they're very squarely in like at the very least a little left of the mainstream Democrat
they're liberal,
institutions, right?
No.
Liberal.
Let me actually no. This is what's happening, right? First of all, to add to Destiny's point, you have social media that is creating echo chambers, but even more so, the process of social media means that the loudest voices are the ones that we hear, right? Like if you're a Twitch streamer right now, right? Obviously you're not right now, you're on YouTube, but right, like, but when you're a Twitch streamer, right, like 80% of your views are lurkers, right? So it's the 20% are the only people that you get any opinions from because those are the loudest voices. And the loudest voices tend to be more radical. They tend to, you know what I mean? Like the normies that don't want to, that are less extroverted, they tend to sit more towards the center in their opinions. So there's that. The other thing is there's a collapsing of what the left used to be for so long. And we can look at this historically. What the left used to be is a majority of liberals and then a wing of radicals. And those wing of radicals pushed hard, and then the liberals kind of kept them quiet, compromised with them, and then presented solutions to the mainstream. You saw this in the civil rights, right? Like you saw this in the new left. You saw this in the anti-war Vietnam era. What you saw regularly was a few radicals doing a lot of craziness, right? And then a large amount of liberals that said, yeah, we kind of agree with you, but we want to negotiate. The other issue, this is the third point. The other issue is that when people talk about leftist philosophy and like what's occurring on the left, what they don't
Two
realize.
sentences.
Oh, fuck. All right, I'll have to make this based ass point later.
Well, I'll hang on to that and say, well, yeah, you're kind of right, Fabian, and this is why the real tankies will say electoralism is garbage, because there's always a compromise with the existing hegemony, and that it has some truth to it. But I almost don't care, and that's why I call myself the centrist anarchist, because yes, we have
you're a
hierarchies,
mutualist?
and we have to, we have to compromise with the latent hegemony all the time. Just keep pushing, and eventually things will improve.
So I wanted to focus back on what originally got us here, right? The media was that argument with Destiny about the media was a little bit of a tangent. But talking about the political polarization and how we got there, right? So Stephen posed that like the culture institutions of the left, of the culture institutions have to be more left. And then we have
some
other
of them, yeah, and then some are moving
Some
to the right, but we're just getting separated. I think even Scalia, I think, admitted before he died. I watched some speech between him and Pryor, or not a speech, but they were having an argument. But I think even Scalia admitted maybe it should be a little bit easier to pass legislation because Congress is so fucked. But not because of Congress, but because of how divided I think the American people are. Because we are, I think we are historically divided. Every single generation says that. Everybody always says it's the most divided everyone. But I think that something unique that exists now that didn't exist in the past is we are more nationalized. People aren't as allegiant to their local area or state, and the internet is hardcore accelerating us off into different corners in ways that it never did before. We are able to filter people on an unprecedented level, and humans are really bad when it comes to selecting groups of friends because we will audit and audit and audit until only the people that look like us or have the exact same ideas are left. And I think that's also accelerating the polarization in a really unique way. We don't have to engage with our local communities anymore. We can either move or just sit at home on Discord with the only people that agree with us.
Well, so I want to challenge a little bit of that, but it's probably in the opposite direction that you think. The right is coalescing more as it moves right, and the left is spreading out more as it moves left. So like like we have some polling data to suggest this. I don't know that I would like necessarily stand by it as hard fact because I don't know how much I really trust polling institutions. But that being said, from what we see that the right is coalescing around single views far more than the left actually is. But the left has all of the institutional power, right? I mean, like, I don't think anyone would argue that the left lacks institutional power when it's presented in Hollywood. It owns the media. It has most of the executive branch. It has control of academia. You know, I mean, like the left does.
I would argue.
We'll argue. I think it's a silly argument, but go ahead. Like, what big institution does
so
the right predominantly have?
I think you're on the right track, but you got something wrong here. That within the left, right, we have the corporatist liberal ring, right? That's his Destiny's favorite. That's his home. Right? And then we have leftists like me, right? Will be the hope for the future. But that's where we're like sorting ourselves into, right? Within that party.
No, it's not.
It should be. We should like on the left. If by left you mean like the Democrats in general. Right, like the Democrats in general should be two different parties, right? Like we don't actually agree, right? I don't agree with so much of what our friend Steven here says, but still, we are vote for the same party, right? And we have to fight within that. So I think that we are having that the spread that we're talking that. Go ahead, please.
What you're looking at is you're looking at policies, and you're not looking at philosophy. And this is a problem because the left has a lot of mixing and fractured philosophy that is growing in the left, right? So you have liberalism, right, which are the corporate neoliberals that Destiny says are base and you don't like, right? That's liberalism. You have modernist people that believe in the institutions of government, etc. They can talk to the right, even though the right doesn't like them because they don't like their policies. They have somewhat shared values. And then the rest of the left that you're just putting under one camp is Marcusians that have a lot of power that work with neoliberal corporatists. You have individuals that are spread and ideologues of like woke identitarian politics. And these are neo-Marxist vanguard individuals that are like critical race theory or like, hardcore feminism against TERFs, right? And then you have like the general leftist philosophy of like consequentialism and things like that goes upon the whole left, right? Like Destiny himself is a consequentialist, and like so are you. So you have overlaps in philosophy that keep you on the left together, but then you have totally radically different philosophy that is fighting against each other.
I hear you.
Where's labor?
I'll say this one thing. I just want to say this one thing, right? So I hear you and what you're saying in terms of philosophy, and I guess I agree largely with that. But what I disagree with is like, does that actually matter? Like in the end, it's the policies that we are focused on because the
policies are downstream from the philosophy.
Hold on.
I know you're true. That's right. Correct. Right. But the policies are how people judge our institutions. The focus of this conversation to begin with. Right. So, like judging us by what policies that we can largely agree with is, I think, a more useful lens to look at this than like looking at all the different philosophies that we might fall into. I'm done.
I feel like I hate to suggest a simple explanation for what are usually, to borrow a word from maybe multivariate influence problems, but I think for this one, I think you can actually point to one big thing. I think that having a person to hate or fight against is an unimaginably powerful unifier and will get you across so many fucking issues. Like, I think that like 95% of Americans were ready to suck Bush's dick after 9/11 because we had an enemy, somebody in the Middle East, who the fuck cares, and we're ready to fucking go on anything. I think that's why you see high approval of presidents during wartime. I think that the reason why the left, even though we kind of had some division, we got more people out to vote for Biden than in the history of any president ever. It's not because Biden is a charismatic, amazing guy, even though he is. God bless
He's
our
not.
fucking hero, Biden. I love him.
He's got cancer and COVID.
I want to
okay,
go riding
like,
bikes
relax.
with that dude. What an amazing man. But it was the idea that we voted against Trump, and as long as Trump was that enemy, that figurehead there to fight against, it was enough to get everybody out to vote and to work together to some extent, and even to kind of shut the fuck up of that radical left wing. You didn't hear him as much during the election season. But
How's
after
that
Trump
healthy?
was gone, because for a variety of reasons. But after Trump was gone and that enemy vanished, and you peeled back that like anger and hatred towards your one kind of like unifying enemy. Now we're all kind of looking at each other like, well, who the fuck is next? It's like the end of Ender's Game when they beat the buggers, and now everybody on Earth was like, okay, time to go back to fighting with each other. Or I guess what would have happened after Independence Day 1 ended. Like, when you get rid of that one common threat, everybody starts looking to fight inward. And yeah, right now we don't see it happening with the Republicans because they're kind of unified against Biden. But I think that there is a big division in that party between whether the party of Trump or not. Even if 80% of them support him, that's a big chunk of your party to lose 20% that aren't enthusiastic about it.
I don't think
we
so.
don't see that as much.
I don't
What do you
think the
mean?
right is unified against Biden so much. I think the right is finally, for like 80 years they've been behind, and I think they are unifying against the philosophy now. I think the right is far more concerned with like quote unquote groomers in schools than they are with Biden. I think they're far more concerned with like woke identitarianism and ideology and what they see as like left-wing excesses than they are against the actual president.
But the right has defeated abortion, and now they need a new bugaboo to scare people. That's
Well, I don't like that. I don't think it's. I think this is a huge problem. I think if you're on the left, you have to erase this from your brain. I don't know if you're on the left or not. People will do this thing where they say like Americans care about meat and potato issues, economics. That's the important thing.
Mhm.
That is not true. Even working class Americans really care about social issues. You can find a lot of poor fucks in America that don't give a fuck about tax policy, welfare, unemployment, but they will die on the hill of abortion. There are certain political topics that are cultural topics that are incredibly important, even to working class Americans. And I think that's important to keep in mind when it comes time to vote. I don't think that Republicans are just looking for bugaboo issues. I think that not Scalia, the guy that wrote the majority opinion on the Alito.
Thomas.
Alito said it best.
On the other case. So sorry.
The majority. Alito said it best when he said that like we solved abortion like 50 years ago or whatever, but we haven't. It's been a divisive fight that's just as heated, today as it was the very day that Roe was passed. The day that cases, those days.
That's what Amy Coney Barrett said in her Senate confirmation, right? That's why she didn't agree with stare decisis.
I disagree that it was as divisive then as it was now, right? Because it wasn't necessarily like the religious right hadn't like gotten its teeth into that yet.
No,
So,
I'm just saying, like, it was. It's just they didn't have any power to stop it because of the Supreme Court.
Sure. But like, it distracted me from what I was going to say. I was going to say, whatever. But I think our institutions are failing us are perceived to have failed because when you look at those social issues, yes, well, now I remember what I was going to say. Destiny, I agree with you that like social issues are animating, right? They animate people in a way that economic issues don't. But I think that the left's ideology or the progressive ideology focusing on economics instead is something for long-term organizing, long-term building of a movement. Because on the backs of that, right, like improving people's lives that way, being the point to these policies that say, like, look, you were struggling for childcare, right? This is a huge chunk of your income. We've just solved that for you. It's just taken care of, right? Like something that you have been worrying about the entire time is how am I going to pay for my kid's college, right? Like I want my kid to have a future.
I'm not saying economic issues don't matter at all. I'm just saying don't discount the social issues because those are really important to a lot of people. Right.
Okay,
if you fuck up
fair.
all the econ issues, people are going to be mad, of course. But I mean, people don't even understand econ issues at all anyway. Like, I'm pretty sure if you poll most Americans, you say, like, how much did the U.S. government help during the coronavirus stuff? Like, most of them would say, like, oh, like, there was hardly any stimulus given out, or the government did, like, nothing, even though we gave, like, more stimulus away than I think, like, every other country in the world. Like, arguably, it's part of why we are experiencing the inflation we are now. So, I mean, like, people don't even have a good head for what, or like, how many people you ask, like, what did Trump, do you think Trump was good for the economy? Like, 98% of Republicans are like, Trump was amazing for the economy. Really? What did he do? They don't even know a single thing he did, right? Or you ask, like, is Biden bad for the economy? Yeah, of course. What did he do? He raised gas prices. How? Well,
I agree, but you can, but then, I agree on what you just said. However, like there are issues that you can point to that can change public opinion, right? So talking about Obamacare, right? Like I hate Obamacare, right? It was a half measure at best. But it was unpopular at first because of the Republican propaganda push towards it. But now that people have access to it, that like the and all the provisions, like the opinion of the ACA has risen, right? Because people can see this thing that had an economic impact on their lives, right? And then they can reward generally a party that has given them that, right? At least I hope that that's what they'll do afterwards.
Dog, their opinion has changed because time has passed and people are economically illiterate. That's the only fucking reason. It's old news, so of course polling does better, right? Like when it was happening, like there were people joining the military just to feed their fucking family because Obamacare had gutted their ability to have any fucking health insurance for their family. But what the fuck did you expect when you adopted Mitt Romney's fucking healthcare plan?
I know, it was terrible idea. ACA is garbage.
Well, hold on, to be clear, the ACA got like 10 million more people covered than ever were. So the idea that a bunch of people couldn't afford under the ACA that could before is not true. There were more people covered under the ACA than in the past.
Okay, you can't look at a macro idea of like how many additional people were entered into the system and then do an individual analysis of people that had to pay more money because of it.
You're doing
Well,
the
more
same
people
thing.
might have had to pay. Yeah, more people might have had to pay more money, but the goal of the ACA, because of what it was at the end, was just to get more people enrolled in insurance, and to that end, it was successful.
Right.
It didn't have any cost-cutting measures into it, so we wouldn't expect costs to go down, unfortunately.
Yeah, we had an enormous escalation of healthcare
lot of people
costs
did.
in the early 2000s. So I don't know why you think this is Obamacare's fault.
Why didn't you say it was
so-
directly Obamacare's fault? I mean, the first place I would blame is the FDA.
Watch the VOD.
So okay, my only point of
No,
bringing
I'm
in
just saying that
Obamacare
was a
is
result.
that-
Like I would say the FDA is the
that
biggest
that's
problem.
an example of a policy that you can point to, and like Democrats have run on that, right? Democrats have won on the back of the ACA, as limited and as pathetic as it is, right? Imagine if they had a better policy like Medicare for all, right? But the thing is, so you can point to these things, and in the long term, build on that, right? But
you have to keep in mind too that once you pass those could become popular, and then technically this is good, but it feels bad. Like if it's really popular, your opponents might start to adopt the position, and then you can't really use it as your thing anymore. So for instance, wasn't Trump trying to take credit for having the pre-existing conditions and shit when they were trying to like, I feel like I heard Trump say that multiple times because it was a popular enough provision, right?
The better example is Mitch McConnell, right? In Kentucky, right? Like he attacking the ACA, right? But then in his state talking about like the state insurance thing, the Kentucky Connect saying that's amazing. Look what I gave you, right? Which is part of the ACA. So yeah, that's a better example.
Yeah. So technically it's good. We want them to adopt these ideas for all Americans, but then it sucks. It feels like you're not getting credit for it, right?
I mean,
like when Hillary
or
kind
it
of
sucks if you're one of the people who are punished for it or don't want it.
But that's a messaging problem. What you just said
It's
is a
not a messaging problem.
Like,
if
no,
I'm
sorry,
individually
Scott, I was
impacted
referring
in
to
a negative way.
Scott, sorry, no, I
I'm
didn't
sorry.
mean to, I meant that at
Well,
Destiny. I'm
sorry,
sorry.
will you-
Yeah, you can argue that there are messaging problems. Republicans do. I think it seems to be the case that Republicans do a really good job at taking credit for things they've done or haven't done. And Democrats seem to have a harder time taking credit for things they've done or haven't done. But that might just be a feeling I have. It might not be true.
No. First of all, it absolutely is true. It absolutely 100% is true. But I think more importantly, too, relating it back to what you said previously, is that Democrats have a problem with blaming the other party, right? And giving them credit for all the terrible things that they've actually done, right? So we have a Biden, right, the charismatic individual you're pointing to, talking about his Republican friends and talking about, well, this isn't like the real Republican Party, the one that's that caused January 6th and whatnot, right? Like we have Democrats who are just buddy with Republicans, but also when the Republicans do something that they know is unpopular, like hanging that around their necks, right, so that no one could ever forget it.
Yeah, but
the reason why the January 6th committee has been so successful is because it's something that most of the public never gets to see. Like this is.
I think that the issue is that Biden's path forward, as much as we all seem to hate it, is like
Who gives a
literally
fuck
the
about
only
the January 6th committee, dude?
It is the only It is the only path forward for a functioning United States. We have to have like Democrats and Republicans that can talk to each other. What we have right now is not working. Going forward, it's not working. Biden was able to pass an unprecedentedly huge infrastructure bill, right? Never passed that level of infrastructure before. He did it with Republican votes. Biden was able to pass, even though it wasn't much. It was arguably the most the biggest piece of gun legislation in like 30 years, I think.
Yeah, please let's not give that credit.
It's 94.
Well, you don't have to, but it was. It was.
Yeah, I know. No, hold on.
And then
But
hold on, wait,
calling
I'm
it the
just saying-
biggest.
Here, go ahead. Finish. No.
Just calling it the biggest like gun reform, right? Like just it papers over what it actually is. It's a paper thin version of reform.
But before
And
we didn't even
I agree, but I'll give him credit. He did it. Yes.
Yeah,
he
and before
did
we
it
didn't have
bipartisan.
paper, maybe, I don't know 100% yet, but I hope so, because if it does happen, there's a few people banning my subreddit. But it might be the case that in the Senate, we might actually codify gay marriage. That might happen. If it does, it's only going to happen with Republican votes. I think there are 5 Republican senators that are for sure, have at least told media that they'd be on board with it. So I mean, like, we have to be able to work with people in the Senate and in the House that are mainly in the Senate that are Republicans, because if we can't, we're too divided as a nation to pass any legislation. We're like, fuck.
No.
Okay, can I pose a question? Can I pose a question quickly? Because I didn't notice Stephen answer this. When it comes to the institutions, one question I pose is, are institutions well suited essentially for the current landscape that we're in? And technology is going to be the biggest thing. Is it that, because you're talking about this division, which is being spearheaded by technology and the internet, is it that the institutions are not adequately developed to manage this? Or is there some level of institutionalization that needs to be done to have some level of handle over what the internet is doing to the division? I'd be curious your thoughts on that, Stephen.
It just depends on what you think the institutions are for. So, like, if you think that the institutions should have a lot of friction and they should only represent an overwhelming will with a lot of will for American people in certain directions, then the institutions are working really well. Again, people are pointing to the divisions in Congress and the inability to do anything like it's a problem with Congress. But I think you could argue it's not really a problem with Congress. It's a problem with the division in the American people. If it was the case that Americans were united on a ton of issues and we just couldn't fucking pass anything in Congress, then I think it's time to be like looking at Congress and like, okay, something is broken with you. But right now, everybody looks at Congress and go, you guys suck. We're not getting any legislation out of you. But then you turn, you look at the American people, it's like, holy fuck, you guys are crazy. Between January 6th, between the vaccine shit, between how we feel about Russia and Ukraine, like every single issue, it is the most insane divides that have ever existed. Between Roe v. Wade, between the groomer shit, between everything. We don't even talk about immigration anymore. That was a hugely divisive issue. We don't talk about healthcare. That's a hugely divisive issue. It seems like we're divided in unprecedented ways in which we have never been before. And then we look at Congress and we're like, why isn't legislation passing? Well, that's probably a big part of it.
So I think like real point here, like I think a lot of that technological issue can be fixed to a certain degree if Jane Doe v. Facebook, like there's a lot of cert of denials that give the opinion from Thomas as well as many other people on the Supreme Court that they believe that the lower court's ruling on Section 230 is absurd. With a more conservative SCOTUS bench, I think that a lot of these issues can be resolved if they accept the case, which I think they probably will. So like, unless you pack the court with lefties or something, like in the next year or two, it would not surprise me that some form of censorship online, which makes these echo chambers so much worse when they're getting state funding and they're getting state protections because of the lower court's interpretation of Section 230, is likely to change a lot of this ever increasing, worsening situation of all of this censorship that creates such strong echo chambers.
I think you don't understand the internet if you think that Section 230 has anything about organizing. It's like it's only what's in the popular media, and you can't say at the same time that popular media is garbage and that it's this supremely important thing such that Section 230 is destroying our institution. So I want to step away from I want to step away from the brainworms and get us into where technology is actually reforming the party system. Is like parties, like especially Democratic and Republican parties, have been primarily, the people inside of them have been retirees, have been people who are independently wealthy, and using technology, getting in there in the Zoom and the Discords and the Slacks means that young people have more access to these institutions than ever before. And I think that's incredibly positive. It doesn't need to be about the public facing, streamer brain stuff that you're all talking about. It can be behind doors, beyond the reach of censors, and actually talking to people, reaching out to people where your voice matters. So please.
I know that you don't believe this. I know that you don't believe this. I have proof that you don't believe this. I have proof that he does, that he's lying.
Okay.
Okay.
Give us your proof, and then we got to wrap things up because that's
Soyadle,
you
Soyadle, you specifically joined my server, my Discord server, on a sock account because you said that you saw the writing on the walls and that certain political beliefs in Discord servers were likely to be nuked and censored, and you didn't want your account to be censored in my Discord server because you were afraid that we might talk about COVID too much, or we might talk about specific political issues. And so the idea that people are able to organize without the issue and that this is making things better, while you also believe that certain political opinions are going to be censored in those things.
For interacting with crazy people who
I think I'm calling your bluff, dude. I'm calling your bluff on your bullshit.
No, it's not.
Before Destiny goes, I'm going to do the actual streamer thing, right? The smart streamer thing. I'm going to talk to his audience. Hey, guys, my name is Primecayes, right? Primecayes. I stream on Twitch. And I stream on YouTube. So you should come if you aren't familiar with me, right? I've dunked on Destiny before. It's not my first time, right? He remembers the pain. So if you want more of that, right? And if you want more of these, because I do these type of panels all the time, come on over. You can be a part of it. I do open panels all the time, like all throughout the week. So sign up. I'm streaming right now on YouTube, but I'm also streaming on Twitch. Primecayes, Primecayes. Come sign up. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Destiny?
I'm Destiny on all the YouTube.
Okay, Destiny, I know you need to go, so thank you so much for being here. If the three of you would like to stay, we can continue for like another half an hour, and then I need to get skedaddle as well. If you guys want to cap it though here, just give me like a thumbs up if you want to.
I'll give you my shout outs
real quick. Before I leave, you guys shout out before. So my audience knows where to find you. Go.
Thank you. You can find me on Twitter mostly, Carl Alex Pauls. You can also go to Soyadle on both YouTube and Twitch, but I also have another YouTube channel called Your Environment Seattle, and I have a third YouTube channel called the Eco Monitorist channel. I have a show every Saturday, 11 a.m. Pacific, and you can find me all over the place. If you're going to Albuquerque this October, right after TwitchCon for the Thorium Energy Alliance conference, I'll be giving the opening address. I'm a big nuclear advocate. If you think nuclear is based, I think you're based. Soyadle.tv.
Well, I guess since I'm the only one that hasn't said anything, whatever. I'm Scott from Fabian Liberty. We're an anarcho-capitalist duo stream. We primarily on Twitch, though you can follow us on YouTube, or if you search Fabian Liberty on Twitter, you'll find us as well. We do a lot of philosophy stuff. We do a lot of news. We do some reactions. We also do a lot of interviews. You know, we interviewed Tulip R. We interviewed Buck Angel. We've interviewed, Dr. Walter Block. We've interviewed certain, Libertarian Party candidates. And this Wednesday, coming up, we will be on twitch.tv/Fabian Liberty. We'll be talking to Yaron Brook, who is chairman of the Ayn Rand Institute, probably one of the most, besides maybe Leonard Peikoff, probably the world's most famous objectivist in the world. So if you want to be there for that as well, come check us out. We keep them coming.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I think Destiny's about to dip. Thank you guys all for being here. Appreciate it. Do you guys want to fight about internet for another half hour?
Meat. Do you
what about your moderator? Like, come on.
Yeah.
He's a newbie. He's your protege.
Why you all shit on me? He's going to tell you why. I haven't
your
done
protege. All right.
Before you try to act like I'm an asshole, Meat can explain to you.
Oh, why you're an asshole?
No.
Yes. Let's go.
Why I didn't give you space to shout yourself out.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I wasn't. I must have got distracted there for part of a second. Why we give you what? Sorry.
They're asking. They're saying I'm an asshole because I didn't give you space to shout your own name out.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah, that was an important part of this. Yeah. Oh no, I'm fine. I'm not. So I guess I'll make the announcement here. I don't think I'm going to be streaming anymore. Haven't really been digging it. It was a fun little It was a fun little experiment. I'll still probably pop on your open panels when someone says something that pisses me the fuck off. But yeah, I was helping Erudite out because she's trying to kickstart this thing and with this dual moderation role, and I thought it'd be a nice little send off. So no, I'm thank you for the money, everyone, but shouting myself out is no longer relevant.
Fair enough.
And
I
all of you
appreciate what I
forced
could get
him
in
to
the
say
meantime.
that right here, right now, when he wasn't ready, like
Yeah,
a
you
bunch of
fucks.
assholes.
Oh my god. Trying to call Erudite out. What the fuck?
Thinking like I don't think 8D chess. Rude.
It was nice talking with you again, Steven.
No.
Haven't done so in a long
Only
time. I
3.
missed it.
Yeah,
So hopefully we
but-
can do that again.
Okay, be careful. If there are any more N-word debates, make sure to message. They're up the
Absolutely.
Good to talk to you. Let's talk about nuclear sometime. Anytime.
Well, do you guys want to continue, or are we feeling good for the day? Okay, I'll give you guys another half hour.
I don't care one way or the other, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I can. Sure, let's do it.
What are you talking about? I was only here for the clout. Now that Destiny's gone, I'm fucking.
Oh, wow.
Well, now I can give my
viable
biggest,
option.
braggadocious, most like base takes. Now that the big audience is actually so. I really do believe in organizing in the state party, and we had this enormous victory this year when the freaking idiots from the 31st LD tried to pass an anti-nuclear plank, and at the same time, my caucus had developed a paper that became entered into the arguments against, and it was just a total disaster for the anti-nuclear folks, and they got beat out 420 to 206. And that's why you should be involved.
I'm all for nuclear. Also, just for the record, state of New Hampshire, super libertarian. The only big funding bill that they possibly proposed, as opposed to nullification and reduction in state power, was to put a board together to study viable options to bring nuclear to New Hampshire.
So before we get lost on nuclear, I actually like to ask our lovely host, Erudite, a question about her opinion on Canadian institutions.
You're not the moderator, Prime.
I am not the moderator, and she can tell me to fuck off. That's her ability. But I was wondering, what's your opinion on your current institutions? Do you like the landscape overall? I know you and I have different political opinions, so maybe if I looked at it, I'd have a different opinion on these things. But what's your centrist, terrible take?
I would say that, at least in Canada, for the most part, our institutions work pretty well. Confidence in our institutions is actually decently high for the most part. There are inherent problems with any democracy or institution. There are pros and cons. If somebody came up with a better system, I would be definitely for it, because I think there's critiques to be made. But I'm definitely not really a radical, dismantle any major institution, excluding potentially. I might be willing to radically dismantle public education with radical reform. That's the only thing that I don't know how we correct it with the institution as it is right now. Other than that, I think all problems with institutions can probably be corrected at an institutional level.
Could you explain your issues with public education? That sounds fascinating.
Sure, but I'm going to maintain moderator, so I won't go too much into it. But okay. I basically, at least in Canada here, I think that there is this growing issue where essentially education has fundamentally just become childcare. And I think because of that, we see a massive, we treat it like the most cheap budgeted childcare. So we hire as minimal teachers as possible. We educate them as minimally as possible. We give them tenure and unionization so that by the time that they're compassion burnt out, you can never fire them. And so they'll just lay in their job and be shitty to kids and not really care, and there's no reason to, because they have salary. And so I think that we have this system that, in my view, I think kids, I really care about kids, and we're constantly giving kids the short end of the stick. And I think public education is the most extreme form of this. I think increasingly kids are getting to university and they're less and less prepared for university demands. They're getting funneled into university like it's something that everyone should have to do, when the reality is most jobs that people do don't actually require a bachelor's. It just requires a bachelor's, right? It literally requires a bachelor's. We just don't give a fuck what it's in. And it's why the fuck are we even doing this? What's the point? Make academia for what academia is for, which is pursuit of knowledge and inquiry and research. That's based. I'm a nerd, fucking love that shit. And so we have kids who are unprepared. They're getting 18 years of babysitting that's typically subpar, sub-quality. Kids are getting bullied the fuck and traumatized. And I'm not fully against bullying. I think some level of peer pressuring and social correction is valuable. The problem is that we have so few staff that we don't know how to deal with it. So the best way to deal with it is just say never be mean ever. And so the only kids who get away with being mean are the passive aggressive fucks who make everyone else's life a living hierarchical nightmare. Just in no way do I see any redeeming qualities of the public education system. And the issue in at least Canada specifically is the way that you go about reforming that isn't super clear, because it's not a direct one one-to-one line between like the public and our educational institute.
Two sentences.
He asked for my full opinion, so there's my full opinion as it stands. There's obviously a ton of things that I'll probably move on any position with enough evidence.
I had to. I'm sorry. I had to.
Yeah. Erudite though, and I know you don't want to dig into this now. That's fine. But I think that we have a lot of common ground here that we could discuss. But the one thing that I
agree with everything she said, by the way.
I agree.
Progressives and radicals love my education take.
Yeah.
I do.
Abolish
the
Department of Education. Get rid of it all.
Except that we have to abolish public education. Now, it's true that I may not completely understand your system. This might be something I'm missing there. But I feel like everything you're talking about can be easily reformed. Unless maybe whatever system you're talking about might be superior to that, like you're replacing it. Might be superior to that, but the public education system, I don't think is the problem. I think it's all the politics around it that you were describing. But
what he's saying is vote the right people in, and it'll magically be solved.
No, that's not.
That's what he's saying. Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah,
to bring it back to voting, if we just vote hard enough.
Field is hot dog shit. I think the board members in education are hot dog shit. I think everyone virtue signals more than they actually care about anything, and it seems like distinctly a problem in any childcare service. So like, I don't know how to reform it with the system we have, because when I look at it at every single level, there's a problem, and I'm just like, I don't know how we fix this without just like a complete overhaul. Which I also realize is an idealistic goal. I realize that'll probably never happen, but that is my position. What would be the best?
We need an auditor.
Right? Would you still have like standardized education for the public, right?
Yes,
like a free.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So maybe when you're saying that we would drastically reform the public education or get rid of it, right? You don't mean. Okay, what?
None. So I definitely recognize that like literacy and basic education is like the fundamental thing that typically makes almost all nations go from being impoverished and like very corrupt to better. Education is the best thing you can give, for example, countries that are impoverished, and getting girls in school specifically. So basically I would probably bump the age, right? We're like rushing to throw kids in school. Some kids are starting school at 3. I've worked with people, I've nannied for families whose 3-year-old has homework. 3-year-olds don't need homework. There's no reason for that. There's no justification. It's just putting a lot of pressure. Then we wonder why at 22 everyone's stressed out, burnt out, and hates their life. It's because they've been working since they were 3.
You're too white-pilled. There's a reason for that, right? Because
I know
the left doesn't have children. The left reproduces asexually, and they want the state to have more control of your children at an earlier age so that they can indoctrinate them at an earlier age.
The left is when
so close. You're always so close, Scott. You always like swing, and then you just skate right over.
All the time he does it.
He's
all
like,
the
here
time.
are all the facts, and I'm like, base, and he's like, so here's the conclusion, and I'm like, what?
How does he do it every time?
I mean, how am I right every time, and you're just a lefty?
No.
You
got
can't
all
get
the
it through
right
your head.
facts and all the wrong conclusions. It's so impressive.
Oh, well, would you like to challenge one? Any of the conclusions that are wrong that I've ever had? Would you like to pick any of them? Pick your favorite one that is a conclusion that I've had that you think is wrong.
Presently, not right now, but at a future date, I would love to.
Got it.
Yeah, I would like to have a conversation.
I'll give you a ton of time to research which of the ones that you think is wrong is the one I'm the most wrong on, and you can come at me anytime.
Sure.
It might be fun to have a larger conversation with you on education reform and like what you think. I can try to educate myself on the Canadian system, but like, I think a lot of the things you're talking about like are cross-border.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I make a dream education system, then we would make a dream education system, but I realize it's very unlikely. It's very untenable.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Well, fair enough. So back to this with the remaining time that we have. So what
you guys there was a little bit of drama going on between Scott and Soy about how Soy was lying, according to Scott, because he was using a burner account. And it was originally connected to things about like internet and institutional control over it.
Right. So no, you're absolutely
I don't
right.
know if it's drama. I was just calling you out.
It was great. I love it. I did catch a ban on Discord for being in an anti-vax Discord server. And I was made a moderator. And I actually went to VidCon and I snuck into the creator space with a community badge, and I talked to Discord about this directly. And so yeah, there are individual liberalized institutions that are actively censoring people But that doesn't mean the internet is trash. That also doesn't mean that Section 230 has anything to do with free speech. It's no solution at all to this Discord problem that you think I have. It proves nothing. That's
well, no,
it.
I think lower court's interpretation of Section 230 allows for a lot more censorship than what would be allowed if it was appropriately decided. I think if the Supreme Court, right, under Thomas's opinion, in his assertive denials and the justifications that he put forward were the majority opinion, and he wrote the majority, what you would see is that it would be very easy to sue institutions that you have a contract with. Let's say like if the Supreme Court was to adopt either of the assertive denials where Thomas speaks on, like, it's like, I think one's like 90 pages, right? So it's a bit to read through. But if that was to be adopted, Destiny easily could sue Twitch for a breach of contract for not appropriately providing him the right information and following their rules appropriately and making sure that the rules that they have are the same rules that everyone else follows. And we would have Destiny on Twitch, or we would have a very, very clear guidelines in TOS and communication about what you can and can't say. And I think that this would stop having such a large impact, especially like places like Twitter, right? Where like James Lindsay is getting banned for using the word groomer inappropriately. So now we all have to use the word predator and just use Reddit and then predator, or we have to say something like Disneying, right? Because it's really going to be really difficult for them to ban words that are already attached to high ESG scoring corporations, right? But that's the thing, right?
Okay, I actually like your nuanced take. It is not the empty-brained Republican Section 230 is bad, we need to abolish it take. That's the one I'm used to.
No, I'm saying that the state is affording protection to these corporations to set up contracts, and that those contracts are not being enforced or punished in any way at all, really. I mean, it's almost impossible to sue YouTube and win, right? Because the lower courts just say, no, we kind of get to do whatever we want, and our TOS doesn't really mean anything.
It's even worse than that. Like, in terms of it's not that it's impossible to sue YouTube. Like, if you're a larger corporation, you have the funds, then you can get them to settle and do what you want eventually, right? YouTube's terms of services is designed around corporations, right? This whole copyright infrastructure we have is designed because Viacom told them to like we're gonna fuck you in the ass if you don't comply with us, right?
That might need to be a different legislative thing,
but
than Section
so I think
but DMCA.
So it's
I don't know. They might wrap it together.
So it's just that when it comes down to suing, that's not the word I'm looking for. But when it comes down to that, once you've gotten to that point, you've already lost, right? For when it comes to the common man, because the common man just is not going to have the funds to do that, to take them to task. Like if I have a problem with Twitch, first of all,
you're wrong.
Arbitration.
You're wrong.
Sorry.
Because if I sue Twitch, it costs Twitch money. If I sue YouTube, it costs YouTube money. And the fact of the matter is that you as an individual are not going to be able to have any meaningful change, but 1 million YouTubers suing YouTube it's already nearly a bankrupt thing anyways. Right? You see what I'm saying? Like, it's the same tactic with Patreon and Sargon of Akkad.
No. Okay, wait. I agree with you that a class action lawsuit would be the most effective thing. But I'm saying that on an individual level, assuming that you can't actually organize these people, right? Organize these workers, which you should definitely.
Or just 1,000 or 1 million individual cases.
Sure, I hear you, but it costs money, right, to do that. I don't have the resources, and maybe whatever my problem is more unique. And not so many other people are having it, right? Or I can't find other people who are having that issue. So, when I'm having a problem with YouTube, sure, I can take them to court. I can give it a try, but I'm going to get crushed. They can outlast me, right? I tell you what's in my bank account. They can outlast me. So.
You're 100% correct that Section 230 reform wouldn't change that. But what it would change is that because now the corporation knows that they're going to lose some of these cases, they're far more likely to change their system, right, off of that. Because if they lose a couple of cases and then you have a bunch of other open cases, the financial burden on that institution to fix, because it's a company, right? Now Alphabet owns YouTube, right? So for messaging, let's be honest, they don't own it because it's profitable. They own it because it allows them to have some swing in the ability to change ideology and to change the narrative. But if you make it even more expensive, right, that incentive structure changes. I don't think it like it's a perfect solution. I'm a fucking anarchist, right? But I do think that there is some things that we could do to lighten the burden that ideological echo chambers that are reinforced by corporations and their moderating policy can have by a more appropriate and better utilization of Section 230 in the lower courts. And that's going to require likely the Supreme Court to step in.
So as a libertarian, are you comfortable constraining Twitch and YouTube's contract rights?
What do you mean by constraining Twitch, and what do you mean by that?
So the reality is that right now they offer you a contract where you agree to binding arbitration, and you think that that should not be allowed. That you should have the right to sue them.
Well, I think that the current system under common law and libertarian philosophy would be that this is a contract that is likely unconscionable, first and foremost, because they don't actually abide by their own contract, so they violate their own contract regularly. That I would also say that changes to the contract to individuals that are already streamers, right? So for example, like people that have been around for a while, that would also be a violation of the contract in terms of undue influence if they change it massively and they have a large enough of a monopoly. So I think there are multiple ways you could look at it from a libertarian philosophical perspective in terms of common law practice of contracts and whether or not those contracts are valid. Am I willing to just have the state step in and then just say like, no, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, in non-voluntary means? No, but I do think that the courts are not appropriately protecting actual contract law, and without contracts, you can't have libertarianism.
Well, I guess libertarianism. But
libertarianism in the Rothbardian tradition, not in the libertarian socialist tradition that was a no-name nobody, de Jacques, and then the word completely fell out of practice, and a bunch of lefty anarchists are mad because we got that word back.
I'll take it.
Mm-hmm.
Good chat.
Oh shit! I don't know where, like, you know what I mean. Like, does anybody else have anything that they want to do?
I don't think so. I think if the conversation's coming to a natural conclusion, I'm happy to wrap it up. Anyone have any final thoughts before I wrap things up?
My final thought is that I appreciate you stepping into the Friday night slot, and while I think the name of both sides is a little silly, especially when you bring two anarchists on the first time. Branding is branding, and if people like it, they like it. Maybe find some righties. I don't know. But other than that, I think it was a lot of fun, and I appreciate it. And I appreciate the more structured form of like telling people to shut up and stop gish galloping and pay attention to what the issues are.
Just to be clear, I don't want people to not be mean. My cardinal rule is you can be dumb, you can be mean, and you can be wrong, but you can't be all three at the same time.
I guess so.
You can't argue me off of it. That's how I moderate my entire Discord server. It's our cardinal rule, and it's based.
If I'm correct, I can be mean and wrong, but I just can't be dumb about it. I have to be clever. Okay.
Well, the problem comes into who gets to decide who's wrong.
People just loathe you. When you're dumb, mean, and wrong all the time, everyone on the panel and the viewers, everyone just hates you. It's unbearable to deal with. But if you're like dumb and wrong, but you're not being super mean, it's not the end of the world. If you're only two of these things at any one time, everyone's like, yeah, there's something redeemable.
If you're smart enough about it, it's still annoying. We're just willing to put up with it, that's all.
Yeah.
It's entertaining.
For sure. Yeah, thank you. I am glad you guys enjoyed it. If you guys have any feedback, since I've just started doing panels and stuff, let me know.
I got it. No, I'm going to say this. Like, I really enjoyed this. This was a lot of fun. I was going to just DM this to you, but I'll say it to you in public then. I really enjoyed coming on. This was fun. You got a great group of individuals here. So thank you for thinking of me. And please invite me in the future. I would love to come.
Awesome. Meet. I'm sorry that this is one of your last streams, but thank you so much for helping me out and finishing this up.
I'm glad to be done with it. All right, I was trying to force a square peg in a round hole.
It's a lot of work.
this was a great alleviation to my suffering.
Right, and you even had the right politics for it.
What being I don't know, being a based reasonable centrist. A lot of people don't like that on this platform.
No, they're
crazy.
Look, no, Twitch is only.
I love
Twitch has
the status
allowed
quo. Daddy government. Let's go.
Twitch allows two opinions primarily: hardcore leftists or center leftists. Other than that,
Okay.
Twitch is fucking mad.
All right, well then I'm perfect. I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
Now sometimes I'm called center right if I'm arguing with a leftist, but it just depends how mad.
Well,
they
I
are.
mean, yeah, of course, NotSoErudite's barely a neoliberal. Like, she's pretty left wing, and yet fucking Primecayes is over here like the centrist, and it's like, okay. And people think Counterpoints is fucking right wing, and that's the most hilarious shit to me. It's like he's obviously a lefty.
You believe in the marketplace of ideas, but you just can't explain why righties are failing on Twitch. I mean,
Yeah, it might be that you literally get banned if you say anything too mean about Keffels.
Erudite,
the rules are the rules.
So
now the rules are the rules in the marketplace.
I'm not
Get
sure
the
it
fuck
will,
outta
but
here.
I'm soft rating you at least. All right, everyone who's watching me, I am soft rating into Primecayes. I have spammed you guys with the link to his stream like 17 times, so go there if you want to keep listening and watching. Make sure you guys give a thumbs up, and if you want to support me, you can always become a member. You can always donate. All donations are going so that I can go to TwitchCon in October, so you can all see your favorite Canadian goddess. So you're welcome, everyone. You're welcome for using your money to go to TwitchCon.
Party in my room.
Well, you can donate. You can donate to me or follow me at Fabian Liberty. I'm just trying to eat. That's
Yeah,
what my
yeah.
money goes to. I'm a lot
I'm trying to
smaller.
eat.
I'm just trying to eat. I'm not trying to get money for TwitchCon. I'm not even allowed.
You're not allowed at TwitchCon? Or you're not allowed to travel?
I could go
In the
visit.
state of California, he's not allowed.
That's true. That's probably.
Is it like a vaccination or like a criminal issue?
Well, I'm obviously not vaxxed. Like, I don't know who's dumb enough to do that.
Yeah.
Surely
Yeah,
not us.
imagine. Okay. Well, thank you guys so much. I'm going to stop the stream now and have a super wonderful night.
Oh, you have a good one. Where are we at? Well, that was fun.
Oh, Destiny dipped out on y'all?
Yeah, well, I mean, he had to go at fucking right at 9 or something. I don't know. Oh, man.
I had to take the dog out, so I missed him leaving.
Yeah. That was fun. I would like, God, I just wish YouTube was like better for discoverability and had like a chat system that like worked, but it doesn't. It's terrible for streaming.
Yeah, you can't at people, or you can't reference someone's like post and just like respond to that post.
No, you can at people. You just have to, but you can't reply to people. So you can
That's
at
what I was
people, but you
saying.
can't.
I just said that.
You get emotes, but only if you're monetized. Which fair enough. Twitch is basically the same thing. You have to be an affiliate.
Yeah.
There's not the same integration for features or buttons. Becoming a member and things like that. The monetization doesn't work out that well. The messages, the super chats are like, they take so much money from super chats. It's just like, it's just bad.
Unfortunate.
Scott for Nerdrotic show in the future. Well, I mean, I DM a lot of people. All right. I'm trying to get stuff together, but like people are flaky and difficult to do stuff with.
Cody guy, if you have an in there and like you want us on there and they'll have us, like we'll definitely show up. Like totally down to hop on Nerdrotic.
Right? I'd love to. I mean, also like Short Fat Otaku, I've spoken with him several times about scheduling something, and he'll DM me and then like just not get back to me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's rough, and a lot of people just ignore their DMs and emails and stuff, unless you have like some type of in with them, or you have the right politics or something. So it's a bit of an uphill battle, and for whatever reason, libertarians don't like to talk to other libertarians. I can reach down, but I can't reach up. You know what I mean? Like if someone's trying to use our platform to grow, like they'll talk to us, and I can talk to those libertarians. But like in terms of like talking to anybody bigger than us, it will not happen. Like I've yet to find a libertarian that's larger than us that'll talk to us.
Yeah, it is pretty difficult.
I mean, ANCAP Gamer and Horror Amarada spoke to us in the very beginning. But I don't know. Doesn't happen so much anymore.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there.
I don't know. But with it being YouTube and it being lame over here, no, I'm kidding. Make sure you follow us at Fabian Liberty. Follow if you're watching now and you're not following the YouTube, please do. Follow us on Twitch. That's where you're going to see us most nights, between most weeknights and every other weekend between 7 p.m. and midnight to 2 a.m. somewhere around there we stop. And then Liberty_Fabian, or you can just search Fabian Liberty. You'll see us. It's the same logo everywhere, same name. It's not lame. Let's make it based. What, YouTube? Well, I mean, I can't change. I mean, YouTube is better about some of its content moderation. It's not as good when it comes to like COVID and things like that. But it's better in a lot of other ways. Yes, Yaron is talking to us. That. But if I ask him if he's a libertarian, he'll probably say no. To be fair, when I'm talking about libertarians, I'm not necessarily talking about objectivists. But yes, Yaron Brook is speaking to us on Twitch on Wednesday. So make sure you follow twitch.tv/Fabian Liberty, spelled just like the name of the YouTube channel, because we will be speaking to Yaron Brook.
Should be fun.
Dude, I can't message you on Twitter for whatever reason. I'd like to have a conversation sometime in one of these non-college degree having dudes, so definitely punch it. No, I saw your thing. I meant to DM you and your boy. I apologize. I fixed that. Apparently my Twitter DMs were open, but they weren't open unless they followed me and I followed them both. That was like the default setting, but it showed my Twitter DMs as open. So I just assumed they were open because I just joined Twitter like 3 months ago or 4 months ago. March.
Something
so
like that.
We started technically we joined in January, but I didn't do anything. Our first tweet was at the end of March. So April, May, June, July. Yeah. So like four months here soon. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but you can DM me now. Jackson seems to get to talk to some big names. I'm not sure I know who Jackson is.
Jackson Hinkle.
Well, Jackson's a pretty big streamer before he got banned off of Twitch, and a pretty big YouTuber before he got banned off of YouTube, and had a lot of Patreon members before he got kicked off of Patreon. Poor Jackson Hinkle. I fucking hate it. Like, even though he's a commie, you know what I mean? But no, we'll definitely talk to you. We'll bring you guys in. Okay, folks. If you're thinking about buying a Rippaverse comic, do not use PayPal. They are playing games with thousands of dollars. Yeah, I'm sure.
I don't know why he trusted PayPal.
Yeah, PayPal already temporarily banned him before this as a payment processor.
I forgot about that, but yeah, they totally did that.
Like, why would you trust PayPal to go through? Like, why wouldn't you just use the other payment processors and subscribe or something? Or what is the PayPal alternative? I can't remember. But regardless, we're gonna get out of here. We're not monetized yet, so I can't I can't raid anybody on YouTube. So I love you guys. I appreciate you coming. Tomorrow we're gonna be working on a bunch of stuff for the stream. We're gonna put up YouTube shorts, some of our better Twitch clips, and we're gonna brainstorm a bunch of things we can do. And soon we'll be getting green screens, so you can stop looking at like this messy bookshelf and stuff. But make sure you join the Discord. Which should be in the description of the video. Make sure you join the Discord, because I mean, fucking, why are you not in the Discord? But also you'll get our go live notifications. Both you'll see when new videos pop up on YouTube, because YouTube notifications don't work. Neither do Twitch notifications, at least for us. Other people get notifications, but we get about 6 or 7 out of our 1,600 followers. And they report that to us, that they only send out 6 or 7 a night out of 1,600 people with 1,000 people with notifications turned on. But yeah, so definitely go to beam me up, Scotty. Hold on, are you oh yeah, we can bring you in for a couple minutes, Casimir, before we get out of here. Also, we'll probably be in the Discord for a little bit. What's up, Casimir? You can't say beam me up, Scotty, Captain Kirk, I mean, and then not have your audio set up once I drag you in.
Also, it is Scotty. The phrase is beat me up, Scotty.
New to Twitter, YouTube, and everything. Honestly, started my show in May. Definitely appreciate it, man. Good show. Yeah, like I said, definitely DM me on Twitter. I made sure that my DMs are open now. So, and I don't see you DMing me yet. So what the fuck? Casimir, are you there? Oh, my Discord shit on the bed just now due to Cam. All right, well, we'll probably be in the Discord for a little bit of hanging out tonight. So definitely join the Discord in the description. That's probably the best place. We got over 400 people in there. Pretty active Discord. A lot of topics, a lot of memes, a lot of philosophy and economic discussions and stuff like that. Did you have anything you want to say?
Things happen there. Things happen there.
Is it working, Cass?
Yeah, it should be working.
Oh, there we go. What's up? Hold on. Before we close out, what'd you want to say to the stream? It should be working, and then it's not working. All right. Well, we'll see you in the Discord once you get it figured out. What did you want to say, Mark?